Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Star Wars Lads. Hope you all missed us because we missed talking with all of you. It has been almost 2 weeks, or has been over 2 weeks since Andor ended, and we're here to do our first live stream and Q&A post Andor. So for those of you who might have joined us for the first time during Andor, we do these usually every Tuesday. This so we took last week off. We decided to take a week off. We let you guys know that in the Andor stream, and then with this week, I had some commitments on Tuesday, and Sonic had some commitments last night. So we decided on a Thursday stream, but we'll be back next week on our Tuesday slot, and it should remain that Tuesday slot, barring some type of conflict. And we'll do a better job of letting you guys know. But we were kind of up in the air with what was going on this week. But we're back, and we are going to take your live questions and ask us anything about anything you want to discuss. It does not have to be Star Wars related, can be Star Wars related, usually does turn out to be Star Wars related. But if you'd like to ask about something else, there's a lot of other great movies and things coming out right now, movies, TV shows, video games, anything like that. Send it in to the chat and we can discuss. We do have some main topics, and we always cover the latest and greatest in Star Wars news in these streams. So we do have main topics we'll get to. Those will kind of drive the conversation. If you guys have anything you'd like to say or discuss about the specific topics, we'll bring your chat into the discussion. Otherwise, it is first come, first serve, barring a super chat, which will get you bumped up to the top and will instantly answer your question as soon as whatever topic we're talking about right then is over. And we will make sure we get to all super chats before the stream ends. The other way you can get your comment on the stream is to join one of our Patreon or YouTube membership tiers. If you join at a specific tier, you do get priority chat access. You will know if you are part of YouTube memberships which tier that is. On Patreon, you either have to let us know on Patreon what your YouTube name is, and then we will prioritize you in obviously the YouTube chat, or you can comment your chat on the Patreon post for this stream. If you are a member of that tier, you will be able to see the stream. If you're not a member of the tier, you won't be able to see the stream in your Patreon feed. So that's the way you can know if you're a part of that. But yes, those members get priority chat access, or super chats do also get you priority chat access. Otherwise, it is first come, first serve. So you can send in anything you want into the chat right now, and we will get to as many as we can in the next 2 hours or so. These streams are about 2 hours usually, barring a lack of chat. So keep sending in anything you'd like into the chat, and we will get to as many as possible. Our big stories this week. So we have, a ton of Star Wars news to go over. Thankfully, nothing really in the last 6 weeks since Andor started that's like game changing, mind boggling news. But we do have plenty of fairly big stories to go over, and a kind of aftermath and wrap up from Andor. A lot of interviews and news coming out of the production process around Andor and some of the things around there. So we've got plenty of quotes to discuss. But the big thing this past week or so, a little over a week, has been the Battlefront II resurgence. We're going to talk about the Battlefront II resurgence from 2017's EA Battlefront II, as well as the petition that continues to grow for Battlefront 3, including even actors from Andor getting involved in that petition. So we're going to talk about that first. We're going to talk about the announcement of The Last Order, which is a book centered around Finn and Jannah from The Rise of Skywalker. This will be our first Star Wars book post The Rise of Skywalker in canon. So it's a pretty big deal in that sense. It's also tying into kind of the 10-year anniversary of Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, which will be celebrating its 10-year anniversary in December. This should also be the last book that's coming out in 2025. So this will kind of wrap up the rest of that Star Wars news. And that's pretty exciting to discuss. We're going to talk about some other quotes and some other things along the way. But of course, this is a stream that has been dedicated to your guys' chats and your comments and questions. So if you have anything you'd like to say in the chat, let us know and we will get to it across this stream. So let's just get started with the first thing, which is Star Wars Battlefront II, which has reached a new all-time player peak on Steam, which is kind of crazy. And I think there are some things we can think about when it comes to that. I'm not a huge Steam gamer. I do have a Steam Deck, which has gotten me into Steam a little bit more in the last few years. But I still am a prioritize console gaming for things that are multi-platform. But from what I remember, I don't think Steam was as much of a massive aggregator for digital video games in 2017 as it is today, obviously. So this result is a little skewed, that the fact that like the first couple years that Battlefront 2 was out, where it would have been at its peak, Steam wasn't as big as it is today. But still, since then, it's a game that's beloved. It has a big player base. The fact that it's hitting its all-time peak now, 8 years after the game came out,
Yeah.
is pretty cool. And people have been just pushing this petition to get Battlefront 3 made for a long time, but it's really ramped up over the last couple weeks, and it actually seems to be gaining some steam. Now, we don't usually talk about these types of things, right? Online petitions. A lot of them are kind of dumb, but this one, I think I want to talk about because I want it to happen. We've never gotten a true Battlefront 3 in either rendition of Battlefront, right? It would be so cool and nice to finally get this. We've got Switch 2 launching. We're on the 5-year anniversary of PS5 and Xbox Series X, which means PS6 announcement and Xbox, whatever the next Xbox is right around the corner. It's going to be probably within the next 2 years. They'll announce it. It probably will be up for sale by 2028 or so. That's just usually the lifespan of these consoles. So, with all that coming out, with Star Wars having a resurgence on the big screen, which is right when Battlefront 2 was really had its peak popularity, right? They stopped service after The Rise of Skywalker. It really hit that peak between The Last Jedi's release in 2017 and The Rise of Skywalker with all the content around there. Star Wars coming back to the big screen with the way they're kind of restructuring shows and setting their focus around Disney Plus Star Wars and theatrical Star Wars. It seems like now is as good a time as any as we continue to get more and more Star Wars content that's going to start coming out in 2026 and beyond. Seems like now is as good a time as any to do a Battlefront 3. And I mean, since obviously they stopped support, we've had so many big IPs that have come out. Like The Mandalorian didn't exist back then. That has come out. We got season 7 of the Clone Wars, and Clone Wars just in general post Disney Plus blew up into what it is today, even more so than when it was on Netflix, right? So we had that. Rebels really blew up since then. You have the Andor stuff. You have stuff from Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka, and there's just so many things that have come out from Star Wars since then that you could add into the game, that it kind of makes more sense to, instead of, capitalizing on Battlefront 2 hype and just maybe making another DLC expansion, make a third game and give us that third game. I don't know, Sonic, when you hear about the petition for Battlefront 3, even actors like the actor who played Wilmon getting in on it, getting on the hype of give us Battlefront 3. When you hear that Battlefront 2 is now peaking on Steam, what are your thoughts on a possible Battlefront 3 here in the future?
I mean, I want it, right? Like there was even back in 2020 when it first got released for free for people to play during early COVID and all that. Like it was busy. It really was busy, and it just felt like we are entering a golden age. Like they'd finally fixed so many of their issues, had released so much free content, skins, everything, right? Like it just felt like a game had finally reached its potential. I mean, it started off in the whole loot box misery, right? There's a self-inflicted wound. Even today, it's like the lowest rated comment on Reddit from EA, right? Still is owned because of Battlefront 2, right? There it started off on such a bad foot. And then by late 2019, 2020, it's like people love the game. Obviously not peak popularity, like you said. Movies had just finished. If you didn't like Rise of Skywalker, you definitely weren't coming back for more stuff. But people were enjoying themselves, and especially during early COVID when everybody was gaming and just trying a bunch of different games at that point, it really had a good resurgence. It absolutely did. There still is a known fact that there was like a Ventress and Ahsoka files just waiting to be deployed. Like we could have had those two characters just put out there immediately. Like we didn't need to have anything specifically with, you know, like a map or any sort of game mode. You could have just put that out and people would have been like, yeah, I'm excited. I get to finally play as these characters who, Ahsoka just months later just absolutely elevated to a different level than what she was on Cartoon Network and Netflix. So yeah, it was a real shame, right? When I first heard about that, I was like, this is like the worst thing you could do. Like you could say maybe because of COVID, you have to reprioritized stuff for Battlefield 2042 and all that, but that was a game that turned to be such a waste, and yeah, I mean, I like seeing the peak, don't get me wrong, like, it's exciting how much PC gaming is, absolutely leading this, like, push, right, for this game to really be revitalized. I know so many people still play with mods, custom servers, everything. Problem is, I think EA is kinda done with Star Wars, like, they have the 3rd Jedi game, they're still continuing support for Outlaws, that, Pirates Fortune DLC just came out, and we'll have some walkthroughs of that on the channel up here sooner or later, but besides that, there some of the internal memos, especially with all the, petitions, everything going on, apparently the internal memos are like, "Yeah, we're not interested at all in getting back into Battlefront. We're just gonna finish up that Star Wars game, focus on our own IPs and all that," and it's a shame, right? Like, 'cause it seems like it's not just streaming that's been affected, it feels like even video game studios that were kinda using other big film studios as IPs, now that's kinda slipping away. We just heard about, like, a Black Panther game that just got canceled from the same studio as, the Wonder Woman game and everything, like, it just feels like these mega superhero action IPs are kind of falling off and, like, and especially in the expansionary way, felt like they were gonna be for quite a while in the late 2010s, so I'm excited to see people's interest. I hope it at least pushes, like, EA to be like, "You know what? We might not do it, but here, let's give the Battlefront license to somebody else." Only thing is, that's just not something any real company would do, right? Like, I think at this point, Disney and Lucasfilm Games would have to step in and be like, "Alright, here's, like, a huge lump sum. Here's the money. You take it, and we get to have the rights. We get to allow another publisher to work on the game." And, I mean, it's probably for the best anyways if that worked out that way because EA, for both their Battlefront games, was pretty flawed, right? I think there was flaws in the original Battlefront game, but there were some incredible maps and team play. Battlefront 2 was a little bit more stripped down in that sense, but people love to talk about that campaign, being able to play as all these, heroes and villains, like, and yeah, it was insane. It was fantastic. It was great, great tie-ins for Revenge of the Sith. Unfortunately, I guess 3 won't happen. I don't wanna be the doomer here in this chat and this discussion, but it just doesn't seem like, even the most reputable sources on YouTube, like Azatru and Battlefront Updates, they're just like, they noticed, but they don't have any real investment, and, you can't really blame them, like, how if this is, like, sustained for 3, 4 months, that's one thing. This is just, like,
Yeah,
2
that's
weeks
not
max
good.
right now. So, they need to see that. They need to see, like, continuous engagement, continuous petitions being signed, just continuous, like, just, shout outs to Battlefront as a game, right? And for that to happen continuously month after month, I mean, that's just not how the media world, the entertainment world works, right? Especially when we've got, like, movies like Superman, Fantastic Four, Jurassic World Rebirth, like, just headlining the next month and a half, 2 months, right? People might be just going out more and doing stuff, might not be gaming as much, right? Assassin's Creed Shadows had all the negative publicity, ends up breaking, like, the Steam single day, record on, just going gold, going public, and then you don't hear anything else about it, right? Like, it seems like just gaming seems to get even more toxic with its publicity, and if you don't have that toxicity driving it forward, and you have stuff like this, which is very positive, it just doesn't match up to it, and that's a shameful part about it, but yeah, man, I wanna be able to play as Cassian Andor, right? Like, I wanna see all his cool suits, I wanna see all these characters, Moff Gideon, like, there's so many cool things from Mandalorian, even if you don't love the storytelling of it, it's perfect for Battlefront because there's just so many cool designs that are just like the late '80s, early '90s evolutions of, what they thought was gonna happen after episode 6 in canon, right? Like, it's
Mhm.
such cool stuff, and, being able to play as, like, a Praetorian Guard sequel versus Mandalorian, like, that'd be such a cool thing to be able to switch between all the maps, like, there's some crazy locations, right? Like, I'm not saying we need, like, a Gorman Massacre map, but, like, there's definitely cool places like Mandalore and everything that we've seen from the animated shows and Bad Batch, I'd love to be able to see some characters like that pop up there. Yeah, I'm not saying books, but, maybe some comics like a Doctor Aphra or something, like, there's so much potential. There's Star Wars has not stopped in the last, 5 years. They've continued throwing out so many characters, if not more, because of the streaming wars. Now that that bubble's burst, you're like, I wanna be able to see all this stuff. Like, I wanna see a K Vest show up in a game or something, like, some interconnectivity, right? But It doesn't seem like it'll happen.
Cal
It sucks,
Kestis.
but we'll see it. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, and Cal Kestis too, I think would
Oh,
sell a game
man.
if you play
Yeah.
as him. And I think that's a good point because 2025 has been an interesting year for Star Wars in that we're basically getting no more Star Wars content on the film and TV side outside of Visions and another Lego thing this year. Now that Andor's over, so Star Wars, all its big releases, they're already done by the end of May 2025. But that being said, we have seen this resurgence and love for Star Wars that a lot of haters out there and frankly, myself and some of the more positive people around Star Wars as well kind of haven't felt in a long time. That surge of excitement and enthusiasm. And maybe it's not towards the new stuff, although Andor does, for the people who have watched it does have, such love and such a thriving community, obviously, because it's so, so good. But I think it really all stems around the Revenge of the Sith re-release, just the
Yeah.
excitement around that and the joy that Star Wars Celebration into Revenge of the Sith re-release, into May the 4th, into Andor finale, like those 4 weeks. I mean, we saw it on our channel. Excuse me. We saw it on our channel and you just see it around the world, this enthusiasm and excitement and joy around Star Wars that doesn't feel like it's been there since maybe Mandalorian season 2, Clone
2,
Wars
yeah.
season 7 time, maybe feeding into 2021 with some Bad Batch stuff, but it's been a long time since that enthusiasm has been there around some specific Star Wars projects. And now seeing that creep into Battlefront 2, which is a game that, if you just looked at critic reviews because they're all from before EA really fixed the game, you would think is not that great. But if you were around this community like we were, from 2017 all the way through 2020, playing it all the time, it's a fantastic game. It really is. It turned into one of the best Star Wars games ever. And so I'd love to see it get a second life. So one of the things in this article, one of the quotes that this whole thing is built on, this whole movement is built on, is there was a developer who worked at DICE and who worked on this game, still works at DICE, but has moved on to other things. One of the producers of the game, his name is Mats Holmes, who said that they're not working on Battlefront 3 right now, but he says, "Hear me out. Battlefront 2 remaster for whatever console is in the future and this current console, maybe take 2 to 3 years. They could remaster the game, add some more modes, maybe add a few minor things. He didn't say this, but I'm throwing out there, why not the Ventress and Ahsoka and Padme, all the stuff that people found in the code? Why not just add that stuff in, give it a little bit of a boost, add some Clone Wars stuff? Like I think embracing the nostalgia. This is another tangent, but the prequel stuff is really what made Battlefront 2 explode when they gave us
Yeah.
the full prequel package. When it first came out, it was a little bit of prequel, mostly focused on sequel and original trilogy stuff. When they brought in all that prequel stuff, Geonosis, Camino, all the different classes of clones and droids and all that stuff, that's when this game blew up. And so if they bring in some Clone Wars stuff and some Mandalorian stuff, bring in the stuff that people love the most, make a remaster. He says if you release that in 27 or 28, then you'd have a team that's now dedicated to the remaster of Battlefront 3, people who are now familiar with the game, because let's face it, most of the people who are probably working on Battlefront 2, they were working on it in 2016, 17, 18. They're either probably gone from the company, have higher up positions at a new company, on a different game. So it's a heavy turnover in the video game world. So it's hard to keep that same team unless you're just making sequel after sequel after sequel. He says then you get a team familiar with the game again. There's a laundry list of improvements that they can add and fix, and getting it updated was always on their wish list. Then once it's a success on a remaster, you start working on Battlefront 3 for the next gen console. You have a team familiar with the engine and assets, could really start kicking off and developing a Battlefront 3 in a much shorter time span, which could give us a Battlefront 3 in a 5 to 6 year plan, which sounds pretty awesome. And so if that's the direction they go, I think that would be a great way to do it. I mean, it's kind of crazy just with like digital games now, with the fact that anybody can get a game whenever they want digitally on whether it's PlayStation or Xbox stores or Steam or whatever. it never feels like a game's that old if it still has a player base, but usually in the lifespan of a video game, 8 years would mean, obviously it's not on store shelves anymore. It's just almost forgotten. So if a remaster would make sense to put it back in the store shelves, give it a true definitive edition. Battlefront 2, even though it came out towards the end of the console life, it's truly a mid-generation of PS4, Xbox One video game, which is kind of
Yeah.
crazy. And now we're mid-generation on PS5, right? So we're way beyond the tech that was used to make Battlefront 2. They could do a legit remaster. And even though when I first read that, I was like, I don't feels like Battlefront 2 doesn't need a remaster. They could do a pretty serious remaster and actually would be pretty awesome. I think they could add a lot of new features, a lot of new modes, a lot of things that would just enhance it enough to make it worth buying. Now, maybe price it at a point that's not 70 or $80, put it at like that $40, $30 price point because it obviously is still an 8-year-old game. I think pricing will make or break the success of a remaster like that. But if they price it at $30 and they add a couple extra features, like a battle pass that's exclusive to it, basically, who's to say it wouldn't work? And I think that's something that's definitely worth it. And also, on the video game side as well, not just Battlefront, but memes and all, the Star Wars side of the Fortnite stuff, even though I haven't played it, that's been taken off, right? Like social
Oh,
media, a
yeah.
lot of that stuff. So it shows that there is obviously still significant interest in the Star Wars that people love, and through that, hopefully with this like 1 year off for Star Wars, we can revitalize new Star Wars as something that's exciting as fans continue to grow and have that nostalgia for Star Wars. And I think that's nostalgia will grow within this next year because we ended on such a high with Andor and we won't really have any more content until then. So here's to hoping that we can actually make something out of this, that Battlefront 3, that a Battlefront 2 remaster, whatever it is, can actually exist for Star Wars here in the future. Because this is a really nice moment to exist in for Star Wars, and I'm
Yeah.
very much so enjoying it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, to be determined, to be determined. Can always, like, what is it? CCC said Battlefront 3 is built on hope for the Republic, Yeah, why not? Like,
Yeah.
we don't wanna be downers about it, right? Like, we're just reporting on what we have heard, speculating on what we think could happen, just trying to give you guys a well-rounded answer, but yeah, it really is just a, a wait and see sort of situation, unfortunately.
Yeah, and where was it? Asks, "Will you guys be streaming Battlefront 2 gameplay?" We don't have any plans to do that. We've tried gameplay in the past, and it's never been a big success for us on the channel. But if enough of you guys want to see us return and add some gameplay streams, we do have a specific tier on Patreon and memberships that get gameplay streams. But if you want to see more mainstream stuff, not on Patreon, return here. We need a big enough group of people who say they will support it. But we'd be interested if that were the case. But yeah, we love we love this game. I've actually been excited to maybe get back into it because it has
Yeah.
been. I don't think I've played it since the Rise of Skywalker stuff came out. Like I played it when that came out, and played it for another maybe month or two, and basically every time a new Star Wars movie came out, it would get me back into playing it again. But I don't think I've played it much since early 2020. So it'd be really nice to get a chance to play this again soon. And if that happens, maybe we'll record it. Let's see who else.
Yeah.
Ray Skywalker says I want to play on Kajimi. That would be pretty cool, especially with the crossover with Outlaws recently.
Yeah.
There's definitely room to do maybe a little more claustrophobic kind of classic Star Wars Battlefront map there. It doesn't. I don't think Kajimi really fits the style that they've gone for with the dice games. But if
Yeah.
you wanted to do some type of like throwback mode where you use some kind of classic style maps, close combat, no, just all units, you're right, no tanks, stuff like that. Uh, that would be kind of cool. It would be a fun little mode that I feel like would be fairly easy for them to add if they ever did do a remaster.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know that was, like, one of the biggest disappointments for people with Outlaws, that it's just Kijimi City, and then there's just so much references to God, what's the name of the, faceless, audio creatures? Man, what are they called?
In
Like the
that game.
insectoids that don't yeah, I'm just what was that faction called?
Oh, the
Um,
faction, the Ashiga clan.
the Shiga clan, right? The Ishiga clan is native to Kijimi, which is like a really cool thing that obviously you don't know out of the sequels, out of the Rise of Skywalker, and they talk about like their little catacombs and like their little hives and everything. I'd love to be able to see like how you can take their species and distinguish that from the Geonosians and still be able to use, like, obviously, a very snowy planet and explore it more, right? I mean, this is a place that spice running happens, right? How exactly does it happen? Can't just happen all in that city, especially after we explored it in Outlaws, so I'd love to see, like, how they use their natural environment and, how players could run into it and we maybe set off, like, reactive explosions and stuff like that. There's plenty of potential, with Kijimi itself, now that we've gotten a little bit more extended media and other versions of it past The Rise of Skywalker. Now it's just a matter of, like, like, can we build off of this? And I mean, I think there should be interest in Kijimi compared to most of the sequel plans just because Outlaws was just last year.
Yeah, definitely. I think it could be really a unique destination, especially from Rise of Skywalker. The ones they've picked for Rise of Skywalker weren't the most iconic.
Yeah,
So, I mean, Exegol would have made a little more sense, right?
right.
Even if even if it would have been a tougher one to make, but like for whatever you think about the Last Jedi, the crate map
Oh,
on
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Battlefront 2 is amazing. It's absolutely incredible, and the way they did that, it's such a great map. So, yeah, definitely would love to see some of that come to life. Let's see, any more Battlefront 2 questions? Hector says, would love return maps desired and would love Geonosis to come back. Yeah, I want Geonosis in any
Yeah,
version of the game. It's such a fantastic map. But yeah, I would love to see some maps return from the original games as well.
yeah,
Obviously, Battlefront 2 2017ified, make them really, really big and expansive because that's one of the reasons why Geonosis works so well. Camino is so great as well. And Camino, I guess, is you could style Kijimi a little bit off the Camino map where it is because Camino is more city focused, right?
mhm.
But it does have a lot of layers to it, inside, outside, all that type of stuff. So um, that's a good example of one that's a little bit different that they did that worked, I thought, really well.
Yeah,
And
I
then
think
we,
it's interesting to also point out, like, for both the original Battlefront and 2015 Battlefront, there's some great DLC maps, right? Like Cloud City, like,
yes,
that's one I'd
yes,
love to have seen in Battlefront 2 and ported over. They just didn't, right? Like, it's just a weird feeling to not have some of these maps that are standouts, and then you have to go back to a game that obviously won't have the same player base that you basically told, "Hey, move over here." Never made sense, but hopefully, if we do to get, like, a remaster or something, that'd be something I'd love to see, just some of, like, the most and I if it has to be on, like, a special battle pass that you pay a little extra for, people will do that just to be able to experience that with the latest version of the engine, with the latest graphics, like, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and like I think a Battlefront 1 and 2 remaster, like double pack, would be
Oh,
really
yeah.
interesting. It would be awesome if they just took everything from Battlefront 1 that was successful, or all the characters that aren't in Battlefront 2, and just put them in the Battlefront 2 style. But if they didn't want to do that, a double pack where they enhance some of the great game modes from Battlefront 1 that never made their way over as well. That would be really neat. Keep the Thorn says, I really want boots on the ground to air combat in Battlefront 3. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like being able to enter an X Wing on the floor and then fly into the sky. Yeah, it's one of the craziest things that they haven't brought back. It was in the first Battlefront. It's never come back. And I want to see it back because it was awesome. I love getting in tanks. I love getting in turrets and stuff like that. Like all that's awesome as well. But adding that flight element, I can only imagine what was done in 2004 being done now. Like the way they would make it so epic. It would be so cool to have that. So definitely, definitely one of the things I want most, even if it is, um, you know, something that would have to require a smaller lobby. I think it would be a mode that would be absolutely worth exploring. And if not, just make it something that you could do locally too. Like if you're playing with bots or with friends, give that option because it is cool. And I'm glad they brought back the ship stuff that just like you can unlock any unit with your points, you can unlock some ships and stuff. That's cool. But just being able to jump in and like race somebody on your team to that X-wing and then hop in and take it and go for a ride. That That's such great features. Battlefront 1, like, if they wanna go back and look at 2004's Battlefront 1, there's so many awesome things about that game that just never came over in any other form, like the squad tactics, a lot of that type of stuff. There's so many cool things in that game that have just been left in the dust for the last 21 years, and, it would be really nice if they looked at that for some inspiration.
And they said, like, they had tech reasons why that couldn't be done on Battlefront 2 and all that, but then, like, a year or 2 after that release, you see the leaked version of the original Battlefront 3, where they're clearly able to go from everything on ground to space, and yeah, it might be a technically kind of like a loading screen, like how Outlaws does it, but that was 2007 and 8 in, like, an alpha build, and you're saying you could do it then, but you can't do it 10 years later? Like, yeah, it never made sense, like, maybe there are limitations with the engine, they couldn't handle something like that, sure, but it's not impossible when we've you're seeing the literal proof on much more outdated specs, much more outdated software and programming, and you're like,
Mhm.
"Well, what gives? What's the reason?" Right? So, yeah, no, honestly, that has to be considered an essential feature for whatever is the next version of Battlefront. Whatever is the next shooter that really tries to play like Battlefront has to have that.
Definitely, definitely. I think that's a great thing that they can pull from the past, and, you see that so often in today, especially with EA, to throw some shade at EA, they're classic for,
Yeah.
taking things from their old games, removing them, and then bringing them back as a new feature, like, 20 years later. Even though the original Battlefront games weren't EA, it's part of their formula.
Yeah.
So, they can look and be like, "Oh, what did we do in the past?" Or what did old games do?" And that we can bring back and fans will get excited for that we don't even have to come up with anything new. This is it. This is something they can do for sure. So, yeah, I mean, it's also unfortunate because like you were saying earlier, Sonic, like, it just does seem like EA is only interested in doing their 3 types of games, their sports games, their occasional open world games, and then their, first person shooters with Battlefield. That's pretty much all they care about nowadays, and sports are really what's making them the most money because of these Ultimate Team packages. But would be nice if they could find a way because people don't get pissed off about DLC or battle passes. What they get mad about is the fact that there's such a high Battlefront 2 was just it had such a high barrier to entry with that. There was basically no way to play online without buying all the microtransaction coins and stuff that you needed to unlock characters. It was going to be nearly impossible to get into the game. And if you didn't, you were at a play disadvantage, which is always the big thing is balancing play so that buying things more is more cosmetic and doesn't necessarily help you cheat to victory, right? So yeah, that's something they have to figure out. And if they wanted to monetize Battlefront, nobody really will have a problem with it if the content, the base content is good enough and accessible enough for most players. And then if you pay extra, you're getting the extra stuff. So if they look at it as like, oh no, we have to do it free because of the backlash, that's not necessarily true. I mean, everybody would prefer that, obviously, but it's not realistic. They're gonna monetize it. It's just a matter of how aggressively they do it. And 2017 was far too aggressive. So that was the big backlash there. But we're gonna run into our next story, and then we'll focus pretty much solely on your guys' questions outside of some lulls in the chat. So keep firing in those questions, those comments, anything you'd like to discuss. This is an Ask Us Anything. It's going to be about Star Wars, can be about anything you guys want, anything you'd like to discuss tonight. Send it into the chat. It can be more Battlefront stuff as well. We'll get back to it as soon as we talk about this because this is the last thing I really want to cover tonight because it is a pretty big story that we didn't get to before, and that is the Last Order. So we've got the announcement of the Last Order and an official cover reveal over the last few weeks. We got the cover reveal about 2 weeks ago, and it is releasing on October 21st, which makes it the last young adult novel of the year. I believe Master of Evil is coming out in November, which will be the official last book of the year, but I believe this should be the last announcement of the year for Star Wars books coming out this year. It is from best-selling author Kwame Imbalia, who has written some Star Wars in from a certain point of view. The book follows Finn and Jannah as they track down a group of people kidnapped by the remnants of the First Order. And it does feature in the cover, as you can see in the thumbnail, and if you've seen this cover before, Finn and Jannah in their stormtrooper uniforms, which is pretty cool because one of the best parts of the character of Finn in The Force Awakens was that he was an ex stormtrooper. It was something that the film itself focuses on a lot in the first act. In the second act, starts to get away from in the third act in The Force Awakens, and then doesn't really deliver much on it. He kind of relegates him to a joke a little bit with the sanitation thing, and then most of the other movies completely ignore it for the rest of the trilogy. And so this is nice as somebody who, really likes The Force Awakens and likes the character of Finn in that movie. That's my favorite version of Finn. I'm really excited for him to get back into this area of his story and just for him to actually have story again. And also this Janna character who is somebody that I never really think about because she's an afterthought in The Rise of Skywalker, kind of just one of these like added things at the end. Doesn't really contribute much to the plot. It's nice for her to get her own story now and get to be fleshed out a little bit. But I think the most exciting thing is this obviously is dealing with post Rise of Skywalker, which is huge because this will be, officially our first post Rise of Skywalker story in book form as we continue to push towards whatever they do with Rey's New Jedi Order, with whatever they're doing with Simon Kinberg's movies, whatever they're doing in the future post Rise of Skywalker. This is kind of our entry point to that. It's our first significant story into that post Rise of Skywalker. And the fact that they're dealing with Order remnants is also exciting to me because one of my biggest complaints about the sequel trilogy is the fact that it all takes place in 1 year and that the First Order, as of now, we don't really have much of it. We don't know much about it. We don't know really how it rose. We don't know how it, started taking planets and kind of being involved in galactic conquest and like getting back into it. Really, Resistance is our only piece of information on it, and that's a small scale, show. So I want to know more about how the First Order came back into the galaxy after being hidden for so long, and I want to know, what are the depths and the length of the First Order to where do how long do they survive after the Battle of Exegol? Just like the Empire, had its climactic battle and the Battle of Jakku in canon, and is still surviving in remnants in 5 years later into the Mandalorian and Ahsoka and all that. How long will the First Order survive, and how long will they push there? And I think there's plenty of story to tell there, and there's plenty of story that can absolutely enhance some of our more grounded characters from the sequel trilogy, like a Poe and like a Finn in that time period. So I think this is a smart direction for them to go, and it's definitely something I'm interested in now. New authors in Star Wars always make me hesitant just purely because I've never read anything that Kwame has written. So I don't know. I mean, I can't remember which story he wrote from a certain point of view either. So my expectations are always a little tempered as we get new authors. And then also this is has a heavy load to deliver for this story. So it can go one of two ways. It can have a lot of lore or it can be very character centric. I'm expecting the second one. I'm expecting it to be more character centric, but I think in a positive way, even though character centric stories have become a little bit too commonplace in Star Wars canon. We get too many that don't push the lore. These are two characters that absolutely need story. So, especially Finn, because Jannah, she's a side character, whatever. But Finn is one of our main characters, and he needs story desperately. So I'm excited for him to get some of this, and hopefully this leads to a little bit more Finn stuff here in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gorgeous cover, first of all, right? Like, I've been enjoying that. I know the Master of Evil cover, the Revenge of the Sith
Yeah,
deluxe cover, like, they've been kinda on a run here, right? It's really just unfortunately the Acolyte books that just don't look great. Even the young adult book that's coming out, you're like, "Oh, okay, why did they adjust that art style and zoom in more?" It's I don't know why. I mean, I guess with the show being canceled, maybe they just don't wanna put a little extra effort there, but those are, like, the initial art styles too, which was disappointing. We had no idea about this book, and then this is the first image they show us. Even if they adjust it from here, like, it's It's stylistic, it's smart, they know what they're trying to do here, right? And the only weird thing is seeing that Star Wars logo is so small, and you're like, "Oh, okay, interesting." Like, the author's name is bigger and the title is there, I guess, but yeah, it's just not something I expected to see, but like you said, I absolutely echo all the same sentiments. This is a book that needs to be character focused. Jannah needs to just become a character. She is, I think, pretty well acted for how little screen time she does have. It's just she falls into that Finn storyline, which is absolutely chopped up in The Rise of Skywalker. I know John Boyega's got all these positive things to say about JJ, but that was a lot of stuff being said before he started filming, right? Like tears of joy seeing the script and all that. I don't know if this is what you were looking for there, man. Like I think even The Last Jedi did more with your character there than The Rise of Skywalker. That it didn't even like hint at like a stormtrooper rebellion. It didn't even hint at doing some crazy things with him with the force and all that. Like it was just like, oh, it's a feeling that he's getting. Like, great, okay. Just blurted out that I'm first force sensitive, and that would change even a little bit about that film and the ending and his choices there, and you're like, "Okay, yeah, that's." You see someone awakening into the Force, like, there's nothing awakening about it, it's like, it's happened off screen, and we're not really seeing concrete proof of it, we're seeing assumptions kind of be played out, right? So, this book needs to happen. If it doesn't, I mean, at this point, I don't know if I necessarily want a book to handle everything about this First Order Stormtrooper rebellion that was there in the Duel of the Fates and everything, like, it would have been great as just, like, a 1 40-minute story arc or 30-minute story arc in whatever version of The Rise of Skywalker, Duel of the Fates that came out. Now that that hasn't happened, now that we've seen real world throughout the world, like, how fascist countries have kinda, like, fallen away and then come back in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it's a much more potent underlying story politically for everything with the sequels. But now you have to kinda, like, deal with people's apathy, how a lot of regimes and governments can kinda keep things at bay and calm, right? You're already starting to see them try to do that with the New Republic stuff, with, everything post Fall of the Empire, and then how that leads to the New Republic's eventual demise. A lot of apathy, not really doing much. How are you gonna differentiate that now to post Rise of Skywalker, where we now know the First Order is not really Empire again, it's just nobody was asking for it, and then it kinda just got shoved back into place here. It is an insurgent force. How is that different from the Final Order that has under Palpatine specifically, right? And his own special fleet of Star Destroyers. What's so special, like you said, about the First Order? How are their origins gonna be important here? We've got the ending of Aftermath as their starting point, right? With Ray Sloan going out there into the unknown regions. We know that the Navigators, we know that, everything that happened with Snoke, him kinda rising to powers because of how he helped safely navigate people, but that's source books. That's little tidbits of information. Now's your chance to at least even touch on some of that stuff and now set the stage for Finn becoming a little bit more militant, a little bit more of a militant Jedi, more of someone like, "Hey, maybe I'm gonna develop the Force, but I'm gonna spend a little bit of time, like a campaign almost, of freeing all these brainwashed, uprising First Order stormtroopers, how that's different from the Final Order, Sith stormtroopers, just kind of play out the leveling and level out the field, make it clear origins, what makes sense there, and current state, and then what's next, right? Then you could still do that. You can still bring back John Boyega, and this is just like, okay, this is something he did, like in a flashback or something, and then you see his Jedi training and stuff like that. There's still so many ways to make that concept happen, and I'd argue it'd be better to see that a little bit more played out because that gives him way more time to just develop what his own set of characters as his own, and then when he does interact with Rey, interact with these other Jedi that are coming up, and you get to see like, "Oh, how did The Force Awaken differently for other people?" You don't look at the Airbenders in Legend of Korra when the spirit world's connected and everything and say like, "Oh, that's the same as like what Aang grew up with." No, absolutely not. There's gonna be changes, there's gonna be differences. What's gonna be different about Rey and her Jedi compared to the prequel Jedi, and even compared to what Luke was doing? What's gonna be different about Finn, right? And what he's led into to become this Jedi, to become this force sensitive wielder, but still be true to being that stormtrooper that turned good, right? Like that still is the most potent part of his story. It just has never been fulfilled. Now's your chance. Don't try to do it all in this book. That's all I'm asking. Like, set the stage for something that a visual medium could really take to another height. That could really, I'm not asking for Andor, but we can see some really cool like dialogue and action and great staging and everything. Like, it's what's a great way to make a galaxy that has been raised and terrorized by the First Order, had planets destroyed by the Final Order and everything. What does that look like with all that chaos? How does he navigate that? I'd love to see more of that and that developing that relationship with Jannah and all these other stormtroopers rising up. That is she force sensitive too in the same way, or is just the force activating on her and freeing her of her brainwashing? Like these are questions that this book can handle. But then once you start saying, "Oh, let's do a full stormtrooper rebellion," I'd be like, "No," because I want to see that as big as possible. Take your time with it. You don't have to rush it now.
Well, and the thing I'm also a little worried about too is just the title, The Last Order. Like, I don't want this to end the First Order completely.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I'm ready to move on from that conflict. I'm ready to move on to bigger and better and different things, right? We did our resurgence of the Empire. We did our, reboot of the original trilogy in some ways of, Empire versus Rebels. We've done that with the sequel trilogy. The sequel trilogy is not well received right now. Should I think we should move on to new things and new iconography just purely to help reclaim those characters so that they have
yeah,
something of their own. Because one of the weird things about the sequel trilogy is just that it feels so discombobulated in whether it wants to be a sequel or it wants to be something new, and how does it contribute and control all of that stuff. It doesn't do it very well, and so getting rid of the imperial iconography I think would be a good thing in the long run. But it's also something that's important enough, the first order is important enough to the lore now that you can't just wipe it away in one YA book. So hopefully this doesn't end everything, and if it does, hopefully it takes place a little ways after uh, the rise of Skywalker, like a few years after. So I don't know. We'll see. More details should be coming out, but I'm just excited that these characters do get a story. Hopefully, the rest of the lore connotations, like whatever it contributes for the post Rise of Skywalker story, it's not so small scale that it doesn't really give more oomph to the ending. Like I want it to actually help contribute to that end, but we'll see. We'll see, and we'll keep you guys updated as this we get closer and closer to the book. We'll obviously be reviewing it, and we'll talk about it when it comes out. All right, so now we're gonna turn over the stream to your guys' chats as the main focus of the stream. So again, keep sending in your chats, anything you'd like to ask us, questions, comments, theories, anything about the stories we've talked about, anything about Star Wars in general. Maybe you just caught up on Andor and you didn't get to join our live streams, but you want to talk about Andor now. Anything you'd like to discuss, let us know in the chat. It is first come, first serve. We will get to as many as we possibly can. If we can't get to all of them, then save your chat. Come back next week. We will be back on Tuesdays every single week now from here on out. This was our kind of emergency stream this week as we tried to get something going amidst our kind of crazy schedules these last few weeks. But we will be back on Tuesday nights, 7 o'clock Pacific time, as per usual now, moving on. So schedule that on your calendars. It's nice to have a lot of new faces in the chat as well. So if you are just joining us for the first time, or you're just discovering our channel, or just discovered us during Andor, or any of the stuff that's come out recently, make sure you join us. We really appreciate having a good, thriving community, a lot of fun chatting with you all and discussing the latest in Star Wars news and all the things you guys like to discuss. So this is your chance to get to know us a little bit better, ask us anything you want. Let's start with the top of the chat right now, which is a question from Matthew, who says, "Is Cloak of Deception a good book to get?" Yes, if you're interested in a couple things. One, I'll start with, if you're interested in the Phantom Menace, then yes, because if you like Legends and you like the Phantom Menace, this is really your only prequel to the Phantom Menace that we have outside of Plagueis. So if you've read Plagueis and you want some like right before the Phantom Menace stuff, like right in the midst of the Phantom Menace stuff, or actually no, yeah, um, then yeah, you can get into this book and you'll enjoy a lot of that stuff. So there's that right off the bat. If you're somebody who's interested in a little bit more broader legend stuff, then yes, this might be a good one, an underrated book that you might not have gotten to. If you like politics, this is another good underrated one that you might not have gotten to. If you like Chancellor Valorum, this is another underrated one if you want a little bit more about that type of stuff. But also, I think the number one other reason I'd recommend it is just James Luceno. I think personally, it's probably his worst book for Star Wars. It's his weakest, least impactful book. But if you like James Luceno and you want to be a completionist, I say get into it. But I would not recommend Cloak of Deception as like a great starting point for Star Wars. If you've never read Star Wars books, Matthew, or if you're trying to find a good entry level book, I don't think Cloak of Deception is it. But if you're just looking for something to read and you're like, I just really am interested in the time right before the Phantom Menace, right around the Phantom Menace, then this is a fine one to pick up because it is a standalone book,
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily like a top tier Star Wars story.
Yeah, and if you are looking for a book that is like, you're trying to go chronologically from 1 through 6, 1 through 9, whatever is rocking your boat right now, I would say probably what's best for you is to maybe read like Darth Maul Shadowhunter. Like that's a great setup for him and his character. It's
Mhm.
kind of the basis of, like, the canon version of the story in the comics and everything too, like and it really does build him up into even more of an intimidating, terrifying force with a lot more of the nuance that, that Maul Lockdown doesn't necessarily get into as much, but, it has become such a foundational piece for, like, transforming him into this very Sisyphus-like character, right? Like, this is absolutely a book that I would say, like, I remember just, like, picking it up once from, like, the school library, and I'm like, "Okay, what is this? Okay, it's a prequel." Okay, and I read it, and I was hooked. It has all it's dripping with tension, with tone, like, everything. It's all there. I think that's a lot more of a classic Star Wars Legends book to read where you can stay character focused, sure, but it is also setting up the stages for a bigger story that you're already quite familiar with.
Yeah, that's another good option as well if you're interested in the Sith side of this story. So it really is depends on what side of Star Wars you're interested in. But again, yeah, I would not recommend Cloak of Deception as like a this will get me into Star Wars books because it's not that type of Star Wars story. Definitely, if you're looking for an entry level into Star Wars storytelling, I would recommend the Thrawn trilogy as the main start if you're interested in getting into Legends. But yeah, so hopefully you enjoy Cloak of Deception if you pick it up. Jose Montes says, "Missed you guys. Missed you too. Hopefully you enjoyed the stream tonight." We answered Clarissa's. Ray Skywalker says, "Hello. Love the Rise of Skywalker." Well, I'm glad you did. Hopefully enjoy this new book that's coming out. It's great to hear other people out here who did enjoy that movie. Tobias Shields says won't happen in regards to Battlefront 3. I don't know. Never say never, especially when something has popularity. When there's money to be made, never
Yeah,
say never.
yeah.
Funky Monkey says hello. Hi there, Funky Monkey. Hector Bermudez says, oh, we already talked about yours, Hector. Sorry about that. Let's see. That Funky Monkey also says, so what's your guys' top 3 Andor episodes? Wow.
Ooh.
That's a tough question. I feel like I have 4. And I'm not saying that just to be difficult. I don't feel like I can separate my top 3 right now. I really need to do like a full season 2 rewatch before I solidify what's my top. Um, but I want to say in no particular order, the Narkina 5 prison escape, which I believe is episode 10 of season 1,
Yep.
the finale of season 1, episode 8, and episode 9 of season 2. I think those would be my top 4. Uh, with Aldani is like a close 5. Um, but even the finale of season 2 has so many great episodes. But yeah, I think those would be my top 5. But that just is a testament to how incredible Andor is and how many standout moments there are. But if you ask me right now to pick my favorite, like just purely right now, recency bias and everything right now, I probably would say Gorman Massacre episode 8 of season 2. I just thought it was so well done, just top to bottom, the pace, everything was just so good. It was so intense. All of it, I just thought was flawless. So there's that. But I did really love that new the Mon Mothma escape arc or episode as well, and Narkina 5, and all that stuff. Oh man, it was all so good. But yeah, I think that would be my favorite if you ask me right now.
Yeah, I mean, top 3 is tough, right? Like, it's I think we both almost kinda hate getting questions like this because, like, when we were film students, people would be like, "What's your favorite film?" Right? And I'm like, "That's terrible to ask me because there's so many reasons I like film, right? And I can't just condense it into a singular film, right?" So, this is sort of the same issue here, but, I'm gonna try my best. I will say, for sure, One Way Out. I think that one is just fantastic, just staging and everything, and, like, just the buildup has been great. Uh Then I would give it to Rick's Road because I just loved how everything culminated. I l I mean, just seeing Brasso literally take the brick of Marva and just smack around people is just so iconic to me even to this day, and the fact that, like, they are playing the theme music, which is a combination of every single season 1 theme. It's just the thought and the process behind it, it's just so good. Um, if I would have to take, like, a singular episode from season 3, that is a tough one because I like I think it is, like, it is episode 8, Who Are You? It is the Gorman Massacre episode because it's just so well executed. Everything with Cyril and his story arc comes to a head there, and you just see how he collapses as a character before he even gets killed and everything. But like Liam said, I do also love the Mon Mothma episode, even if it's not as frantic as I would originally thought it to be, right? Or like a little bit more like layered. It's a little bit more straightforward than I expected. It still is quite good, right? And that speech is nothing to scoff at. It's just the fact that Luthen just has an incredible, incredible speech, in season 1 that nobody can match, right? And then you throw in Forrest Whitaker with his whole Rido speech, and you're like, "Oh my god," like, everybody's just acting their ass off, right? Especially with these monologues. But if I were to throw in, like, an honorary 4th, it would probably be Who Else Knows, just because this is finally the time I got to see Krennic be like the Krennic that wasn't all the pre-Rogue One material. You see, like, he's not just like a blue collar sort of Imperial who's like, you know, worked his way up and he's just, he's not sophisticated, but he gets the job done, right? Like he's not just that. He's dangerous. He's terrifying. He's at a different plane than everybody else. And then seeing how Dedra in her pursuit to, uncover Axis actually caused way more problems for the Empire is literally the reason the ISB is not what it is in the original trilogy, right? Why it's a little bit more of an open game, why it's more like a Wild West that the rebels can operate out of. It works so well, but frankly, I think it kinda just comes down to just him improvising, stabbing his finger to the top of Dedra's head. That's Ben Mendelsohn that I saw in Bloodline. That's the Ben Mendelsohn that's got, like, the whole meme, like, "You haven't been speaking to any coppers, have you?" Like, just the all the funny, funny Australian acting and memes and accent just all comes out there. Like, just he's such a diva, right? He's always been a diva, but, sometimes you need to see the character just absolutely outclass everybody, and the choice of his dialogue was just so rich and gnarly too, like, "Why would I really be here, Dedra? Like, please don't look at me at like this slowly." Like, the way he just, like, broke her down systematically and then delivers it. Lonnie was locked into your account for 3 hours with all these files that you're not like, it's so good. Like, it's just he's not a physical character, but Ben Mendelsohn has so much gravity as a actor, and finally seeing that fully come out in Krennic was just such a feast, such a delight. So I would put that as, like, my honorary number 4. I have to give it to Gorman just because of how much it really is a payoff for so much of season 1 compared to a lot of the other episodes in season 2. But man, the fact that it is probably, like, the most crucial Rogue One setup episode, and you understand so much more about the original trilogy, why everything that happens in Rogue One does happen that way, and everything moving forward in the original trilogy, and then what, like, it allows for the New Republic to slip up and all that. You get so much just from Krennic's performance. Just genuinely just how he approaches everything on course, and, yeah, it's just such a good episode, and obviously, there's all that stuff with Clea and everything, and I did love
Yeah,
Luthen's
that
whole
one's one of my
solo
favorites.
episode too, like, don't get me wrong, his flashbacks, everything not being super detailed, making sure that's very much like a family as needed. As the situation arises, this is what rebellion looks like in its very earliest infancy, right? I loved all that stuff, but that final arc is a little bit more of a feel than it is plot, right? It's more just carrying the final emotions of the characters, the final blocks needed for the character's next story or the completion of their story. So I can't dismiss that final arc, but I can feel that it's a little bit more floatier than something like the Gorman Massacre was.
Yeah, I think that episode 10, the one with Luthen and Clea, would be, like, right there fighting for that number 5 spot for me. Like, I love that episode too. That was so good. So hard to pick, Funky Monkey, what our favorites are, but yeah, it's a testament to how fantastic the show is. I think you could make an easy top 10 and/or episodes, especially if you're doing no particular order, and be pretty happy with all 10, and maybe even be like upset that you had to leave one or two out.
Right.
That's how good it is for only having 24 episodes. The fact that there are 10 fantastic ones is insane, especially comparing it to the rest of what a lot of Disney Plus has done for Star Wars and Marvel and beyond, right? So just so good. But yeah, thanks for that question. Christian says, just sub to the channel, but love Legends lore. Well, thank you. Appreciate you like watching both content. Got me into reading Star Wars. Finished Tarkin last week, and we're reading A New Dawn right now. Well, so glad you're enjoying it. Hopefully, you enjoyed reading Tarkin, and I'm glad you're getting into the world of Star Wars and Star Wars canon. It's a fun ride, so hopefully you enjoy that. John Neuenschwander says, what is a good quality, affordable lightsaber company or website, 50 to $100? I'm not, or for dueling specifically, I'm not really familiar. I don't buy those types of lightsabers. I wish I could give you a little bit better information, John, but I'm not familiar really with anything from these like external saber companies. Pretty much the only sabers I buy are the replica hilts, and haven't bought one in a long time, but I do own 10 or so of those. Uh, but yeah, I haven't bought too many in a while, and I never bought any specific dueling ones. So sorry, couldn't help you out there, John.
Yeah, I have very outdated information, but I feel like Kyber lightsabers, I don't know if they would fall. I think they're closer to like 120, but that was a couple years ago. But those I've heard of it are pretty good. But yeah, I mean, I guess it really does come down to like, are you just trying to like throw a lightsaber to your friend and like, hey, let's just start dueling, or are you trying to stage a duel, or are you trying to enter those like dueling tournaments? Like that, all of that really does make a difference in like the build quality, the weight of the hilt, and everything. So I would say that's maybe a good starting point, all right, Kyber Light. But again, I'm this is all secondhand information that's a few years out of date for sure.
Matthew says, "I love A New Dawn, amazing book." Well, glad you like that one as well. Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Not one of my favorites all time, but it's a solid start for canon. It's got some good Kanan Hera stuff, and a very underrated villain, Count
Yeah,
Vidian.
yeah.
A very underrated villain in A New Dawn.
Definitely. No, I mean it's pretty important for Hera and Kanan's relationship. You understand why, like, Rebels takes a lot of time to like because it's TVY7 to kind of really hide that relationship, kind of just posit them as like the mom and dad of the Ghost Crew. But A New Dawn does not do that. Kanan is like immediately infatuated with her, can't stop looking at Hera and everything, and that's kind of how he gets invested. But then yeah, everything with Count Vidian is his whole cybernetics and everything is very cool. But honestly, I think some of the more interesting stuff was just seeing Ray Sloan as a character for the first time. I loved how she got so much development in early canon. It's such a shame we just haven't seen some. Like I made a
Yeah.
video a long time ago about like, yeah, Ray Sloan was probably killed by Snoke, and this is how does this connect to Thrawn and everything like that. So go check it out on the channel if you can. But it really does feel like she kind of comes into a position where she is the First Order's first leader, and then we just don't know if it was like she was immediately cooed or was it like a 10, 20-year process or something. We don't know anything. It's kind of shocking, especially since we have seen like the Shadow Council and everything, and we've seen Brendel Hux, who we know is with the First Order, but not her or quite yet in live action. And it's like, we're waiting for that. Like, when is that gonna happen? So, love seeing her character develop. There was some really cool black and white art that they kinda released at the same time too. But yeah, just the whole I don't think it was it Corellian, like, security or something, but, like, it was some, like,
Oh,
very,
Corsac,
like
right? Yeah.
Corsac, right? It was Corsac, right? Like, and
Yeah.
I mean, we've had Corsac, like, and analyzed before in Legends and stuff like that, but seeing, like, how Corsac operative works with the cameras, with all the information, with the data and everything, right? Like, that was
Yeah.
it's something that I think has aged quite well. They never tried to do too much with it, but just from what I remember, it was like, yeah, no, these are some really interesting ways of like, how does someone like avoid enforcement, oversight, and everything in an empire that wants to control these people and then use them as assets, right? How does a Kanan fit into here? How does a Hera fit into here? How do Imperials who have to kind of break away from the structure to actually get stuff done, like Ray Sloan work with Corsac, which is not entirely Imperial, right? Like it's such an interesting crux for a lot of, like, what takes place in the story. I just wish that we kinda continued developing it past here because, like you said, it's a I don't know if I'd call it amazing, but it was a really good book with some amazing concepts for sure.
Well, that has wrapped up so far what we have of comments right now in this comment section. So again, continue firing in those chats. We're going to answer them. Right now is a great time to send them in because you're top of the queue. But if you'd like to support the channel, send in a super chat. We greatly appreciate it. Want to join our Patreon, YouTube membership programs, or other live stream elements that you can look into for that. If that interests you, more exclusive content, early content, exclusive polls, stuff like that. Keep an eye out for those perks as well if you have any interest. We have, like I said at the beginning, plenty of more stories to run down. So we have a lot of stuff to continue here. Fire in any questions you have about these stories or anything you think of that you'd like to discuss here in the chat. And we will return to the chat in between each one of these stories. But I think we're on the Andor track. Let's start with this story, which is a developing story, obviously. But we have Andor now finally hitting for the first time the Nielsen ratings. For those of you who aren't familiar, Nielsen ratings are basically our only metric we have for measuring what's popular on streaming. These streamers are all very closed-lipped about their metrics and what's the top and what's the bottom. The best you can really get is like most streamers have a top 10 this week thing or top 10 this month. And you can see it there, but it doesn't include how many people have actually watched it or how many minutes has been watched. So Nielsen aggregates this, and they're one of the top sites for aggregating this information. It's still a little bit flawed again because it's really up to the streamers to release that specific information. The way Nielsen does it is they don't reveal their numbers until a month after those episodes have aired. So the first episodes of Andor season 2 are now officially on the Nielsen ratings, and it debuted fairly low, but this is with a caveat. Debuted at number 10 for its first 3 episodes. Nielsen also aggregates all episodes of a show. So just because a new episode came out doesn't necessarily mean it's just those episodes that are being watched. It might be the entirety of Andor season 1 and season 2. But when you look at the chart, finishing at number 10 is not too bad because it's behind a lot of stuff that's always up there, like Grey's Anatomy, which has 446 episodes and had 850 million minutes viewed. Andor finished at number 10 with 721 million minutes viewed with only 15 episodes. That marked it as the fourth least amount of episodes out of anything on the top 10. So it does have an uphill battle there with Disney Plus. Even though Andor has longer episodes for a Disney Plus show, still relatively on the shorter end of what most shows are when they're out there. So something like The Last of Us was number 3 that week, which was already, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks into its season. I think it was 2 weeks, and I think that was the big episode for those of you who know The Last of Us. So that was number 3 with 937 million minutes listened. That only has 12 episodes, but those episodes are usually all an hour or more, so it's a little bit longer. So it's a weird thing to judge and to track. But basically, Andor not exceeding expectations, but I think doing about as well as you'd expect from a show like this, especially when its first 3 episodes weren't necessarily the most acclaimed of the series. I'm interested to see where the show is at around May the 4th, around when we got the Gorman Massacre episodes and around when we got the finale, because certainly from what we saw on our channel in terms of, people watching our Andor coverage, it didn't seem like it was until about that halfway point through the season that people really started catching up with season 2. And so I'm expecting it next week to be fairly low again, and then for that Gorman Massacre arc to jump way up. But it debuted at number 10, and at least it was on the top 10. Some of these Star Wars shows haven't been on the top 10 until much later into their seasons' lives. So that's a pretty good start for Andor there. If you look at just the top 10 original things, so this is what Nielsen does, taking shows that they consider streaming only, shows that debuted on a streaming service, not on TV, and then went to streaming. So no Grey's Anatomy, no Bluey, none of these shows that are always on the charts, no NCIS. Andor finished at number 4 for its first week. Now they also don't include The Last of Us because they consider that an HBO release, then a Max release, even though basically it's the same thing. But so there's also again still some discrepancies there, but it did finish fairly high. Finishing at number 4 is pretty darn good, and it also does have fewer episodes than most of the stuff that's on that top 10. So a solid start for Andor on the Nielsen ratings. And that's been a bigger story. Star Wars and Nielsen ratings has been a bigger story over the last year or so, both with detractors of Star Wars who want to talk about the failures of something like The Acolyte or Skeleton Crew in terms of viewership, but also for people who are looking at maybe the future of what Disney Plus is trying to do when they're reorganizing the way they're structuring these Star Wars shows. This is kind of an important tool for seeing why they're maybe canceling shows or not committing to re-upping shows like a Skeleton Crew. So this is important information to track, and something that's definitely a little bit more interesting to a lot of people nowadays. With officially our first ever Star Wars show canceled last year, and the excuse was because of this type of stuff. So, Sonic, you hear that Andor started in top 10 for its first week of season 2, and also finished in the top 5 of original stuff in the first week of its new season. What did you think? Do you think that's a positive for Andor, or do you think it's still underperforming in the wake of the rest of these Disney Plus Star Wars shows?
I mean, I think it's great news. It genuinely is, because I mean, we've been hearing some stuff about Daredevil and how it's not like seemingly performing as crazy well as it seemed, like with the social media reaction week after week. And then you see hearing things like Agatha all along actually was a huge grower by its ninth week or eighth week. It just became such a big hit and it legged out really well. And we've always known that compared to the other Star Wars shows, everything with Andor is just atypical, right? It became and made a lot of sense to get this season 2 out as soon as possible was because, hey, it legged out incredibly well. It was shocking to people just how much the minutes just stayed up, if not like plateaued at that finale level for like 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. And yeah, it came out a little later in the year. It's the holidays, so maybe you don't see it immediately. You're catching up. Obviously, everyone's like, who cares about a show about this guy who dies in Rogue One? But then you hear about all the other characters, all that, right? And I'm thinking the same thing happens here. It's actually just shocking to me that, like, first week alone with just a 4-week structure that we had, everything kind of being released as, like, a movie per week, that it can still crack in the top 10. Like, I know it's a lot earlier in the year. That does make sense. That's kinda how movies operate too. Those earlier months aren't really the big, big months, but it's not like they're just competing in an open slate, right? Like, they're competing with The Last of Us. They're competing with all these shows that are equally cultural juggernauts. I wouldn't call Andor a cultural juggernaut. I'd call it the best thing that's been out of Star Wars since Empire Strikes Back, but, I wouldn't say it has that same hype and value. There's a freaking ton of money behind it, and, like you said, that was a big reason for why the app got canceled. It's way too expensive to justify the viewership that it eventually got. But, yeah, I mean, the fact that it's already number 4 there, top 5 originals, yeah, that's absolutely amazing to hear. Absolutely amazing to hear. Now the question is it gonna improve? Is it gonna match up with what we're seeing in the channel? I think so. I think so. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'm surprised in its first week, it's already there. And that first week of episodes, other than the Mon Mothma stuff, it's like pretty average. It's kinda like where we were between, like, the 1st and 2nd arcs of season 1. Obviously, the next arc definitely escalates it a lot more, and then, the Gorman arc takes place, and then the finale, one transition arc. And I think just hearing, like, Rogue One has been in, like, top 5 charts for Disney Plus and all that. It probably just means people are like, "Oh my god, I wanna watch everything from Andor into Rogue One," and if they want
Mhm.
to, Rogue One into New Hope. So I wouldn't be surprised, especially, like, how we started off with the stream talking about just feels so positive since Revenge of the Sith, and everything that's come out has been really good, and even the books have been well received and everything, like, Wayseeker didn't get negative opinions, he just got a, "Okay, whatever," which is a win for the Acolyte and where it stands a year later and everything, right? Like, it's a good place to be at. It's genuinely a good place to be at, so I hope we keep on hearing more. Again, Nielsen is not the end all be all like it used to be back when people had cable and everything was on TVs, proper TVs, right? You know, people always pull out Luminate data and be like, "Oh, the show's got so much on here," but Luminate only works on specific smart TV enabled options, right? Not every single TV has that. What is a smart TV 10 years ago is not the same as today's smart TV, so how does that qualify? Mobile devices, how does that qualify in Nielsen and all that? A lot harder to gauge, but the fact that it's already charting, fantastic news, and I would think even if it doesn't necessarily leg out the same way as we saw season 1, I wouldn't be surprised if we have 2, 3 weeks of it, like, staying on the charts at, like, 9 or 10.
Mhm. Yeah, and I just pulled up Nielsen because I was like, it seems like second week would be out, and they actually did just drop the second week today. So the second week it climbed up to number 6, which is pretty awesome in the top 10 for overall streaming. So that's with the 18 episodes out after. So the second arc, which is when it seemed like Steam was starting to pick up. And if you want to compare it to the other show that's currently releasing, Andor, 821 million minutes watched at number 6. The Last of Us, 827 million minutes watched. So there's only 6 million minutes separating the two of those shows for the fifth and sixth spots. So that's a pretty good comparison, I think, especially when you look at the original stuff coming out there. And if you want to compare it to other original streaming things, Andor was third that week, so it bumped up one spot to third. Pretty far off from the top two, but the top two have far more episodes and their Netflix shows, which already has a bigger install base. So Disney Plus ruling over the rest of the streaming platforms with Andor that week. So it is a huge positive, I think, for them. I think, especially with the way they dropped it, with how it took people a little bit of time to get into it. I'm looking forward to seeing next week's because it should have the Gorman Massacre stuff on there. So that'll be pretty exciting to see how that plays in. But yeah, I think it's fairly good for Andor. It's still not, excuse me, it's still not like knock your socks off, like top tier streaming numbers. Like they're still not competing with Netflix, but nobody really is. And so if you're competing with The Last of Us, which is one of the biggest HBO shows of the last few years, right, and already has a massive install base of gamers who are playing that, obviously coming off of its big episode, which had a lot of people upset and a lot of people talking about it online, and then also The Last of Us definitely succeeded a little bit more for good or for bad in becoming a meme uh, and getting that kind of cultural presence out there more so than Andor did. I think it's a pretty good thing to be able to compete with The Last of Us after, you know, a couple weeks of the show. So even though Andor technically has more episodes, and yes, it is getting the boost by having 3 new episodes every single week instead of just one, it still is competing fairly well with these the rest of these shows. And I think it kind of also shows that the release strategy did work for them in some capacity, even if it was a little bit annoying for the conversation, you know, having to delay our conversation or having to do it late at night, having, you know, a little bit lack of like social media presence for kind of the show. It still meant people were binging it and they were watching it, which is always a good sign. Connor Williams says Andor, Severance, and The Pit will be competing for best drama at the Emmys next year. I hope Andor wins. I enjoyed The Pit and Severance, but Andor was truly special. Yeah, I haven't seen either show, and to be honest, I thought The Pit looked awful when I saw all the commercials for it, and then everybody started talking about it, and I was like, "Man, guess I gotta watch this show." I have not seen either show so far. um, besides Andor. So I hope Andor wins because we are obviously biased. We're a Star Wars YouTube channel, but we want Andor to take it. It would just be awesome as well for science fiction to get, a win there. Like, you don't see that very often. It has to become super mainstream. So, I think it's definitely a year, not calling it a down year, but it's definitely a year without like a huge established like AAA show that's dominating the Emmys like we've seen in the past with Succession or Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad. When you had these shows at their peaks who that went 4, 5, 6 seasons, this is a good year for Andor to actually make that push. Maybe a reason why it was delayed a year as part of their strategy, honestly, for winning an Emmy. But if it wins an Emmy, you can bet your ass that it's gonna jump way up in these ratings. I think it will absolutely climb because now you'll have people who are like, a Star Wars show, really? I guess I got to check this show out. And so that would be huge. And that's absolutely part of their end game is trying to win these Emmys. I mean, we talked about it in the past. It was part of the reason why they released the show this way was to cram in before the Emmy deadline and to fit all that into that format. And just binging shows in general, I think improves overall reception versus waiting week by week. So they're going for it. They're gunning for it. So Connor, I hope you're right. I hope it wins. I definitely want to watch Severance though, because I've always heard great things about Severance. Um, the Pit didn't look as interesting to me, but I keep hearing that it's really good. So, but from somebody like you who has watched it all, Connor, glad to hear Andor is your favorite.
Yeah, no, I've been hearing so much of the same stuff about the pit. I've seen some clips, and I think it's the acting. I think it's the acting, the dialogue, and the premise. From what I've read, I'm like, okay, that's it's a little more interesting than your standard like Grey's Anatomy or you know
Yeah,
uh, these other medical shows, right? So that's cool. I don't see it being a show that has that same quality consistently season after season. I mean, we had that same fear with Andor, and Andor absolutely delivered. It had to be different, but it somehow managed to please everybody, which is shocking, right? Like in this day and age, to please basically everybody, and the only thing that people are like disappointed by is like, oh, we didn't see enough Saw Gerrera going crazy and nuts. It's like, okay, yeah, but there's plenty of books and stuff like that and Rebels and everything that can fill it in, right? Just it's a show that should not have worked. That should not have worked from season 1 to its stylistic change in season 2, but it did, and I'm eternally grateful for that. It absolutely makes Rogue One so much better. I absolutely loved the first half of Rogue One for the first time and allowed me to, like, actually sit in the moments with Jin as a character as opposed to, like, "Oh my god, here's, like, 5, 6 different characters and factions and everything kinda popping up super quickly, super haphazardly." Cassian's intro, everything's just so much more elevated about it, right? Severance, I have not watched either, but I've heard from my friends who've watched it. They're like, it was a really good season, a lot more memes, it became a lot more popular for sure. But it's the thing with streaming, just so many gaps, right? And it takes so long that it's so hard to like, especially since it's an Apple TV Plus show, like it's almost more hidden away than like something like a Disney Plus is or an Amazon Prime and stuff like that. So I could see Severance winning it, but even the friends who did watch and who kept up and who were, like, waiting this whole time, they were like, "It's not as good as season 1." It's a little bit more shocking turns that played off well, but a lot of people still prefer season 1, and I don't know if I necessarily get that same vibe with people with Andor season 1 versus season 2. That was the one thing I was definitely gonna be frustrated by. I kinda wanted to see all these, like, Andor elitists just be like, "Oh my god, they've ruined our show." That didn't happen, which, I mean, that's good in the long run, obviously, but yeah, I mean, I just don't see Severance with, like, a little bit of not a slide, but, like, a little small step back with the gap, and, yeah, maybe supposedly Ben Stiller's gonna take a lot more less time to get season 3 out and everything, but, it's not gonna be the same, I think. I don't think it's gonna be the same, uh, award winning, like, out of the ballpark, like, slam dunk of a show as season 1 was with the awards. I think they're gonna be more shocked that Andor pulled off what it did, and you've got all these, like, actors who, if not A-list already, are, like, now approaching that, and, I mean, I Diego Luna has always been such an underrated actor, and one big thing you can criticize about season 1 is that he does sometimes feel like he fades away into the plot elements, fades away to other characters like a Luthen and all that. Not this season, right? So it's finally a show that lives up to the name too, which definitely helps. So I think it'll be good. I think the fact that it was released like this was supposedly because of the new cutoff for the Emmys too. So as long as the ratings show up, as long as the discussion stays positive, as long as people are happy about Star Wars going into the summer, I think they've got a lot of momentum behind them. I don't think it'll just be technical wars this time.
I hope not. I think the hard part about Andor is there's always a barrier to entry for a show that's steeped in an IP. So, will there be those people who are like, I haven't seen Star Wars, or I'm not a big Star Wars fan, or I don't know, I've never seen Rogue One. Those voters who are like, don't watch it because of that type of stuff. I think that's the only detriment it really has. Because from what I'm hearing from people who are TV people, and again, not really much of a TV person. I watch some popular things. I watch things that interest me, but I don't watch everything. I'm much more of a movie guy. From what I hear from a lot of TV people or people who came up from TV, Andor's far and away the best thing that's come out this year. A lot of people are saying. So I think it has a good shot, but it's sci-fi one, which even though the Emmys embrace some fantasy like Game of Thrones, they haven't necessarily embraced sci-fi the same way. And two, it's Star Wars, so it makes it automatically like at a certain level in a lot of people's minds before they even watch it. And I think also raises the barrier to entry because some people might be like, "Oh, I don't know if I can watch that because I haven't seen this, this, and this." So we'll see where it goes, but I think the swell of support, if the conversation around Andor stays positive and stays lively and doesn't tail off, because people are still talking about Andor a lot because it was a binge show. It dropped 12 episodes in 4 weeks. A lot of people are still just getting to watch it for the first time right now. So I think that conversation, if it stays lively through the summer, has a good shot. It definitely has a good shot. Connor also says, I go back and forth on whether I enjoy season 1 or 2 of Andor more. Season 2 felt like a refinement of the craft. The writing felt so economical, even more so than in season 1. I'm with you, Connor. I think season 2 is much more experimental as well. It tries different things. It tries to incorporate different styles and tries to incorporate different style of storytelling. It lives in the world a little bit more. It breathes, it expands, it feels a little bit more epic and cinematic. Whereas season 1 had, the TV budget. So it was a little bit more constrained. It existed on similar sets, similar locations, slower episodes, a lot of build up. Whereas season 2 is a little bit quicker paced because it had to finish its story arc in 3 episodes, so it does move. I think one of the things that's interesting about the 2 is, like, I think I prefer it's not that I prefer the first half of Andor season 2 to season 1, but I prefer the way Andor season 1 moves in the first half compared to season two's first half. But I think the end of season 2, as great as the end of season 1 is, there's not much better than the really 7 episode stretch from episode 6 to 12 that you have in season 2. It's so, so good. It's some of the best stuff in all of Andor, whereas Andor season 1 has it's also built in arcs, but it takes a little bit longer time to get to its conclusions and then restarts and resets in ways. So it's a tough decision. I think I'm leaning towards season 2, and that's probably recency bias, but season 1 is not to be underrated because it is so fantastic as well, and as a more linear story, it does it as well as it possibly could.
Yeah, I have a lot of the same feelings. I know people don't really love the first 3 episodes of Andor, but they hooked me. Like, they absolutely hooked me, and then I watched it like a movie, to be fair, right? I didn't just, like, wait week after week after week. Like, it just didn't make sense because that's not how you should be viewing that first arc. Aldani, you can watch and feel the deliberate movement towards it, right? Like, that actually works week by week. Not the original arc, right? But yeah, it's it's such a weird show because it is also about the release schedule. It's not just, like, the structure of how the episodes are made, right? Your intention as a creative when you're producing it, when you're developing is not gonna be the same as the person distributing it, the person coming up with schedules and all that, and this is a show that, again, it's so many impossible odds for how it was released, how it came out, the budget, how it was shot, everything, and it seemed to just pull it off. 650 million for 16 hours of greatness, like, it's crazy to say that, but they pulled it off. So I do agree with you, Connor, in the sense that season 2 feels a lot more economical, feels like they did refine their writing, but I think that's more out of necessity, right? I love the deliberateness of season 1, and it was still so strange that they were able to sneak in like an almost like a transition episode in episode 7 between the Aldani arc and,
Mhm.
No Way Out, right? Like, it was kinda crazy, like, that they could do that. There's no space for that in season 2. I kinda wish there was, like, one of those sort of episodes just to kind of transition us, like, "Hey, what's going on with the TIE Avenger? Is that, like, reverse engineered into, like, A-wing technology and stuff like that? We have no clue, or B-wing technology, who knows? We don't really get any development off of that. We don't really see how Yavin goes from this place that has all these crazy Masashi creatures, or at least imply to be, to, "Hey, like, we're living in the jungle with, like, forest camps and stuff like that," right? So, yeah, I mean, it's stuff like that that I can't blame the writing because that's not essential stuff, but it's like, "Ah, man, I need a little bit more," because I can allow that final arc to be floaty in the show because you have to just put them in the places that they need to be for, say, for Rogue One, but yeah, it's a really tough one. I do agree with you, Connor. I do go back and forth, but that final stretch of Andor, the season 2, those last 5 episodes, there's like a 3-episode run in season 1 that I could feel like felt that close, but there's nothing, flaws and all, gaps and all, vagueness as there is in Andor season 2 at times. It just, yeah, like, I can't wait to binge it. I can't really say the same thing for Andor season 1, especially on a rewatch. A lot of stuff that I absolutely loved before, I still love, but it just didn't feel the same way as it did for me in 2022. I've already kinda gone back for, like, different scenes in season 2, and I'm like, "Oh my god, yeah, like, that just works better than even I thought the first time around." So, I will give the edge to season 2 surprisingly, um, but yeah, it's a fantastic show. I'm gonna watch any episode you're gonna put in front of me just 'cause of the incredible acting, the dialogue, the sets, and everything.
Yeah, and to tease something that's coming, we're working on a Star Wars seasons tier list for this month's tier list. We did one back in 23, I think. So it's been a minute, and we have a lot of seasons to add. But yeah, we'll see where Andor season 2 ranks amongst all the seasons of Star Wars TV. Connor says, even if it doesn't win Best Drama, my hope is that Genevieve O'Reilly wins for Best Supporting Actress. Her work in Episode 9 deserves its laudits. But everything on and at the wedding was incredible. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see her win as well. Honestly, she probably should be nominated for lead actress, but the lead in supporting criteria seems to waver every year in the Oscars and the Emmys. It's never consistent because she definitely doesn't have a supporting role. She's like a co-lead for 2/3 of the show, really 3/4 of the show. So I think she absolutely deserves the praise. But yeah, whichever one gives her a better chance at winning, I'd love to see her in that one. And also, I think Stellan Skarsgård needs to be looked at for supporting. I don't know if he'll win, but a nomination, especially because Emmys does 6, right? I think they do 6 or 7, so it's a lot bigger field than the Oscars. So I think he can be looked at for sure. And then Diego Luna for lead. I don't think he has a shot at winning, but I think he would get nominated, especially with the different categories with the drama and comedy categories on in different spots. There's basically, I think there's 12 people that get nominated in the Emmys, so it's kind of crazy. I think he'll get one for sure. But yeah, great shout for that as well. And then we have Critical Thinker says thoughts on Star Wars issue 1, the 2025 Star Wars issue number 1. That it was largely mediocre, which is disappointment given the potential of finally doing more substantial things in the comics than gap and filler stuff. I have not gotten a chance to read it yet. I am falling behind on comics again after catching up like in February, caught all the way up, and then I had this my big trip to Japan and Korea, and have not gotten a chance to really read anything since then. And we've had so many books lately for the channel too, and we're right now I'm going through the new audiobooks for Shadows of the Empire and Rogue Planet that they sent us to review. So we had Acolyte. I read Into the Light. We're still gonna do our review for that eventually. Uh, and then we had Reign of the Empire right before I left on the trip. And now I've got Rogue Planet and Shadows of the Empire. So it's been a lot of Star Wars books lately. Have not gotten to the comics, but it's disappointing to hear that you thought it was mediocre. I'm looking forward to starting it finally when I get a chance.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it mediocre. I think I'm a lot more lenient on comics than you are, critical thinker. I know you're a lot more of a fan of like stuff from '06, '07, right? Like back when we had Star Wars Legacy, Dark Times, and all that. I'm not saying that it's touching those levels, but I thought it was a good starting spot, especially because so much of the 2020 runs are so dependent on 2015 runs, the knowledge there, dependent on obviously Empire Strikes Back. This feels like a clean slate, right? I will criticize the fact that the Battle Jakku Maxi series is very contradictory. There are things that definitely need to be fixed and almost retcon in the series, and I hope to see that happen here. But I like seeing stuff like Valance and everybody kind of be back in action. I thought Phil Noto is a good, strong choice for at least these first few arcs. Um, yeah, I don't I like the New Republic being sport. I like the new pirate faction. It's just the first issue. I think it's not like as bombastic, obviously, as 2015 Star Wars was with its first issue, but it feels about the same level, if not better, than the first issue of 2020 Star Wars to me. So I never have real criticisms, honestly, for these first issues of every run. It's more like, what are you gonna do by the end of that first arc? That's kind of where we'll have an indicator of where the story is going, right? So, that's where I kinda lean. A little bit of wait and see, but frankly, I actually did enjoy it.
And Critical Thinker also says, haven't watched Andor season 2 yet because of work, but I'm glad to hear it's good. Superman trailer also looks good. Really hoping they don't screw that one up. Yeah, I'm hoping they don't either. Critical Thinker. But yeah, Andor season 2 is excellent. Obviously, you're probably going to hear spoilers off and on the channel. Um, can't really do much about that if you join the streams, but we'll keep that in mind that not everybody has seen it yet, but definitely watch it as soon as you get a chance, especially if you liked season one. It's absolutely worth it. So get going on that. And then for Superman, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I'm still cautiously optimistic just purely because we've been burned by DC projects for so long that I can't trust anything. We have never have consecutive back-to-back hits with DC. I feel the same way about Marvel. I have a hard time getting excited for anything with Marvel right now because we rarely have back-to-back hits. So cautiously optimistic. I just know and have a little bit of faith that this is a must win for Superman. Like
Oh, yeah. Oh,
they
yeah.
have to hit it out of the park. There's no faith in DC products right now. I don't think Superman's going to make that much money. Now, that much money meaning like it could still make 600-700 million dollars worldwide, which is a lot, but I don't think it's going to be an instant billion-dollar movie just because I don't think there's audience trust there for DC properties right now. And I think especially with Superman, I mean, the last consensus great Superman movie we've had is Superman 1978, because even people weren't all in love with Superman 2. And I guess unless you want to count the Richard Donner cut, which is consistent consensus considered really good. So yeah, it's been a minute since we've had something that everybody's loved for Superman. I think it looks really good. I think the trailers have all hit that tone. Still concerned about a few things visually and kind of the oversaturation, the way things just it doesn't necessarily look the way I want it to look, but they can hone and enhance and change that style as movies come out. I'm just mostly hoping it's a good movie. If it's a 7 out of 10 to me, that's a big win. If it's like consensus 7 out of 10, everybody likes it because I can like it and everybody else cannot, and that doesn't really matter. So we need it to be really good, and everybody needs to at least think, yeah, that was pretty good. I want to see more. I'm hoping for that because this movie needs to critically succeed and succeed with the fans and with the critics. It doesn't need to make money. They can make. I mean, they can't completely flop. It can't make pull in 300 million worldwide and expect more, right? But they need if they pull in, I think 450 plus to 500 worldwide, and the movie gets a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, they'll be ecstatic. If they pull in that amount and the movie gets, you know, 75%, they'll be happy but not thrilled. Um, unless the fan conversation is much more positive than critics. But yeah, I think that's where it needs to go. And I know that this has to be huge. And since DC doesn't really have anything that like is involved in a timeline right now where they're like forcing something out, I have a little bit more confidence in that just because they didn't need to release it at this release date. Like they could have pushed it off for another month or year or whatever because their universe hasn't started. So they're confident in it, which makes me more confident in it, but I won't be confident until I'm sitting in the theater watching it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love some of the shots that we're seeing in a little bit more of the new trailers, but I am loving seeing all these really interesting characters like Mr. Fantastic and the villains and like all these super bots and the Fortress of Solitude. Like I'm liking it's a world that Superman is in, not that Superman comes and the world begins, right? Like that's kind of how Man of Steel tried to approach it, and it's not bad. It's just we're so used to it now as comic book movie fans, right? And then comic book fans have always kind of known, like characters get introduced, they'll get the little bubble for a little bit, and then they're thrown into the bigger world, and all these connections just have to happen, right? So I know Connor, you're saying like I'm worried about the gunnisms of like crude juvenile humor, side characters. I could see the side character bit, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, seeing Guy Gardner, seeing Hawkgirl and all that, especially since they're gonna be showing up in Peacemaker season 2. I can see that be a bit of an issue. I think there's also like a rumor that like there was a shot of um, Cornsworth filming with a squirrel in a box, and he might be playing that squirrel Green
Chip.
Lantern chip, right? So yeah, I mean, possibly, we might be getting to stuff like that that is a little bit sillier and stuff. But I think we'll be fine. I'm looking forward to more shots of like him standing and talking and moving around, not just purely in action. Because I'm not worried about the action per se, right? I do like how Gunn has handled a lot of like, like, "Hey, look up," and then he, like, flies. I like some stuff like that, right? I do like that. It's not quite like experienced Superman for me, and it's not supposed to be. Now my only question is, right, like, is he gonna be able to have Superman stand out, right? We have Ultraman who may be Bizarro or something, right, just dressed up, and he's been finally kinda pushed a little bit more into the, trailers here, and he might be the ultimate villain. We're starting to see a lot more Luther, and everything with Luther has looked fantastic, right? I'm not saying I'm not sold on Cornsworth, but he's the one character I kinda need to just see talk and act a little bit more outside of, like, that interview sequence that he has with Lois Lane, where, he's like, I'm Clark," and then he's like, "Miss Lane." Like, he gets the whole Superman voice. I'm like, "Yes, that's it. That's exactly what I've been looking for out of this character, like, the dual identity." So I'm not worried, right? It's like the question is, like Liam said, is it gonna be a 7 out of 10? Is this gonna, like, blow up and be like a massive billion-dollar film? It's getting released on the same date, I believe, in China too, so maybe China might like it, or maybe do they associate Superman way too much as, like, an American first hero, like, the old comic slogan and all that. Like, there's gonna be some very interesting things how this plays out in the box office, but I'm confident in an 8 out of 10. I really James Gunn, even if he does things that I don't always love, even if I do think Guardians 3 is a little messy, the heart of that movie is fantastic. And if you're saying that the Superman film is a little messy, but instead of, but it doesn't like take away from the character traits, like you could look at Man of Steel. They have a fight out in the middle of cornfields. It's perfect. You've got the Americana setting all that. And what did they do? Him and Zod fly into a city, which is, like, the exact opposite of what, 1, battle tactics would be, and 2, what Superman would be doing, right? He'd wanna limit human casualties and all that. So much of Man of Steel you can really love even if it's different, and then the ending comes around, you're like, "Oh, man, these are just, like, too dark of choices. These are not Superman choices." I'm not really seeing anything like that happen so far. If anything, I'm seeing a lot of care and attentiveness to, like, the empathy that is so crucial to that character come out in the trailers. Now it's just a matter of seeing a little bit more of the dialogue, seeing a little bit more of the dual identity in play instead of just some of the action and some of the cooler shots that, will sell the trailers, will sell the movie, but is that gonna sell the character quite yet, right? Versus, what we're starting to see with Fantastic Four, where I think they are starting to build up a little bit more of the family dynamic. We are starting to see cool trailers, cool things with, like, just the actors kind of playing for, like, NBA ads and all that, and it's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm starting to see the first family happen here in MCU. I'm starting to see cool things." Anything I'm seeing of Galacticus and his design, I'm like, "Okay, yeah, finally, no more freaking clouds in this from space and stuff," right? So, I'm confident in both. I would say right now, I'd probably think 8 out of 10 for Superman, 7 out of 10 for Fantastic Four, and both do really well in the box office. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm confident. I do feel the MCU, even if you don't love Brave New World, it has that was salvaged, and then Daredevil was also salvaged, but a lot better because they had more time with that. And Thunderbolts, even if it's not gonna match Brave New World, is fantastic critically and with audiences, right? So I think Fantastic Four will be like 600, 700 million at the box office. I think Superman will be closer to 700, 800, and I think that'll be a good summer for superhero films, right? It'll be something that people will watch more on streaming and get a little bit more invested, maybe go back to Peacemaker, Creature Commandos, catch up on Agatha, Daredevil, and everything else in between. I know we got Ironheart coming out, and they're just spamming. Ryan Coogler is the executive producer for that, and it definitely does look better than the first glimpses, right? But they're also releasing it 3 episodes now, 3 episodes later. Maybe we're headed to a good summer for superhero stuff. I don't think superhero fatigue is quite real just yet. It's just that we need consistency.
Yeah, that's the only thing that makes box office return is consistency. I'm not worried about gunnisms. Like Sonic was saying, I feel like they've captured the character. Like I
Yeah,
think he knows and understands what this character means, what he stands for, how he behaves, how he acts. I do want to see more from David Cornsweet. I want to see him acting, in scenes as Superman. Because like some of the lines they've shown so far, like I found, the one where he's like, "Hey, buddy, eyes up here." Like I thought that was a little cheesy, but we don't see it in the scene, right? So like I want to see some of those things come, but like Superman is a hard character to write for because he's got to be
yeah,
cheesy. He's got to inherently be cheesy. Like I feel like one of the only lines that actually like it's an eye rolly line, but it actually kind of works for the character in Joss Whedon's Justice League. When Superman comes back and he enters the scene and Steppenwolf says something like you guys don't know the truth, and he goes, well, I love truth and I'm also a fan of justice. It's so goofy, but it's so Superman. It's what he would say. So like I think there's a fine line with writing Superman. I think James Gunn with his back not his back history, but like his legacy in camp, being a part of trauma, being a part of campy films, coming up through B movies. That helps you write camp. Writing camp is an art. It is an
yeah.
art. It's very, very difficult. It's even more difficult every year when people start taking themselves way too seriously in today's world. It is very difficult to write camp. Go back and watch Batman the movie in 60s. It is so well written. People think of it as just this goofy movie, but it's clever. It is very clever in the way it's written. So you have to be aware of that type of stuff. Go watch 60s Bond movies, go watch stuff like that. And I'm not saying Superman will be existing in that level of camp, that world of camp, but James Gunn knows a level of camp that can be brought into a character like that, but you don't want to make him too ridiculous. So it's a very fine line to walk. I think as long as he captures the character, I'm okay with some of the other stuff that comes with James Gunn's work. But Guardians 3 is the thing that made me less worried about gunnisms because I understand what you're saying with Guardians 1 and 2, with Suicide Squad. Those are all the quippy James Gunn style humor that became commonplace for the rest of the MCU later on because it's worked so well in Guardians, right? I'm tired of that, and I don't really want that in this movie. But Guardians 3 had so much maturity to it. It didn't go for the quips. It didn't go for the easy moments, and so I think it showed a more human and a more mature side of James Gunn's writing. And so it's not perfect, but it has that. And so I think he can nail that. I am a little bit more worried, like you're saying, Connor, with the side characters. I'm more worried about that, but I'm also what makes me less worried about that is every single shot we've seen of them has been like the same scene. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna be like the whole movie we have Guy Gardner around, and the whole movie we got Mr. Terrific, and the whole movie we got Hawk Girl. It's gonna be maybe one or two scenes, and it looks like it's gonna be this. They work for Maxwell Lord. Superman fights this kaiju. They can't beat the kaiju. Superman comes in, beats it up. They're talking to him after. Maybe you have a scene earlier in the movie where they're like, "Hey, stay out of our way." That's a very Guy Gardner type of thing that you would have, and it kind of establishes the world. Um, Isabella Merced's playing Hawk Girl, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
she is blowing up right now with The Last of Us. So that's pretty cool for that kind of corporate synergy for Warner Brothers. But yeah, I'm not too worried about the rest of the stuff. I'm more worried about the side characters. I do want this show or this film to focus on Superman, Lois, and Lex because that is the trinity of what Superman storytelling is. Lex needs to be played through this entire universe like Loki has been in the MCU. He just keeps coming back over and over and over again. Don't need to do the fake deaths, but just make him involved with like every story that has Superman in it. He needs to be there in some capacity. He doesn't need to be the villain, but he needs to be there. And so I
Yeah.
want to see that from Lex. I want to see him in that type of role. Um, and then as for what was the last thing we were talking about with side characters and I just don't think the trailers have really shown us the story of the movie. The plot of the movie is completely vague. We have no
Yeah.
idea what's coming from this film, and so I have a hard time getting like too scared or even excited when I don't even know what the movie's about. I'm just excited on a fan level of like it's Superman back on the big screen, and I'm really praying they do it right. Just the same way I'm excited for Fantastic Four. It's like it's Fantastic Four on the big screen, and I've never seen them do it right. So I'm hoping they do it right. I can't get much more excited beyond that point. Like it's I think until they give us a full like story trailer, which I don't think they'll do unless they're worried about box office, we are kind of going to get these bits and pieces that show the iconography of Superman, show some of the things that make him him, and show the elements of the film, the world that they're creating, but not much of what actually is going on. So hopefully we will see that in the future. But Connor also says James Gunn has handled these elements well in ensemble movies, but I'll be interested in seeing how these work in a solo film and whether they detract from the film overall. And then Critical Thinker says, I have similar concerns about James Gunn. He has his style, and that he's good at. And in order to do a mainstream entry that sets the tone for a whole cinematic universe, he'll have to leave that comfort zone. And again, I think he did it in Guardians. If you watch Guardians 3, it's so different. It's pretty much nothing like the first two Guardians movies. It's so somber. The whole movie is sad. It's the whole movie is dour. That opening scene is depressing. The movie is not a happy, fun movie. I mean, there just the stuff with Rocket and his friends, the flashback stuff when they get killed. It's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of dark stuff in that movie, and I don't think he handles it with the like Taika Waititi kind of like let's make a joke 5 minutes after. It does that's not how that movie goes. And so I think he can handle this. I think he's shown a maturity there that has alleviated a little bit of my worries. I was with you, Critical Thinker and Connor. I was with you before I saw that movie, but since that movie, I've been a little bit more confident. And I think with this movie needing to be a success, no matter what, it needs to be a critical success. It can make $5 and it needs to be a critical success. If it's not a critical success, they can kiss their universe goodbye. It needs to do well because Supergirl's not going to make money either. Supergirl has a lot less likely chance of making money than Superman. So if Superman doesn't work, then it lowers excitement for Supergirl. So even if it makes, or even if it's really great, less people are going to go see it if they didn't like the Superman movie. So they need this to do well for their future movies to do well that are a little bit more of a gamble. Because Batman, Superman movies will always do decent, but you need the critic responses from those movies to support and boost your less popular IPs. And that's what we've seen from Marvel over the years, right? Ant-Man and the Wasp did great. Captain Marvel
Somehow.
did great. Black Panther did great because they were in the midst of this hot stretch from Marvel's big IPs. And then they turned into big IPs. But now we're seeing something like Thunderbolts, which might have done really well in that 2017 to 2020 stretch. But in the midst of a failing Marvel, a Marvel that seems like every other movie is good or mediocre, it's not a new IP is not going to knock the box office down. It's not going to explode. It's not going to be a huge thing, even if it is a really good movie. So they just need to hit it out of the park with this one. It needs to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a wait and see. It's really a wait and see. We can try to reason it away, with our comic knowledge, with our film knowledge, everything that we have, right? Franchise knowledges, but at the end of the day, right, if it were that easy to predict, then we wouldn't have all these upsets and things happening and changing. Things people would be making the films that they want and incredible franchises that they want and still make their critical darling films and make the same amount of money. It just doesn't work that way.
Yep. Well, okay, we've got about 5 minutes left in our stream tonight, everybody. So send in your last chats if you'd like to ask any more questions or have any more comments. Super chats are always appreciated, supports the show. Check out our Patreon, YouTube membership programs as well for other ways you can support the show while getting some awesome perks along the way. If you haven't liked the stream yet, hit that like button because we do have more people watching right now than have actually liked the stream. If not, I think we wrap it up with this, which is just a fun little story. Again, we had so many stories that came out in the last month since we've done one of these that I'm just going to keep saving them for future streams when there's a lull in the conversation. But I thought this one came out in the last couple days, and it was a pretty fun story. So let's talk about the R-rated Star Wars movie that Ryan Reynolds pitched. So Ryan Reynolds was quoted saying that he pitched an R-rated Star Wars movie to Disney, saying, "Why don't we do an R-rated Star Wars movie? It doesn't have to be overt A+ characters. There's a wide range of characters you could use. And I don't mean R-rated like vulgar. I mean R-rated as a Trojan horse for emotion." Ryan Reynolds always into the emotion. I've always wondered why studios don't get just gamble on something like that. I'm not saying I want to be in it. That would be a bad fit. I'd want to produce and write and be a part of the behind the scenes. Those kind of IPs subsist really well on scarcity and surprise. We don't get scarcity really with Star Wars because of Disney Plus, but you can certainly still surprise people. So that's a really interesting quote. I mean, I think on top of everything, first that you have, maybe this probably not happening because he's going public with it, which Ryan Reynolds has been known to do with things he really wants to do that studios don't want to do, like Deadpool
Yep,
1.
yep.
So he is very much so. And in today's world, back in 2015 when he did that, 2014, he had no clout really. He was the guy who did Green Lantern and kind of a funny background actor. To now, he's Ryan Reynolds, one of the most powerful actors in Hollywood. So he's going public with this, and people did make connections to the Tony Gilroy project that he was talking about, where he was like, "Yeah, they're making an R-rated Star Wars thing, from what I've heard, a horror thing." So some people said, "Oh, do you think this is a horror thing?" Now, I don't think so because it's Ryan Reynolds, but it is interesting that he says he doesn't actually want to be in it, which is a surprise to me. Maybe that's why they said no. If he said he'd be in it, but yeah, if he was in it and it's his style of humor and talking about the Gunnisms, like I've never seen Ryan Reynolds not do Ryan Reynoldsisms. At least I've seen James Gunn do a movie that wasn't full of Gunnisms. I've not seen Ryan Reynolds do a movie that's not full of Ryan Reynoldsisms, at least not as a lead. And so it makes me happier that he wouldn't be in it. Although I think he could be a fun part of Star Wars if they wrote the right movie for him. But I don't know about a vulgar R-rated like Deadpool esque movie in Star Wars. I don't think that would work. But I think also the kind of like slight little shade he throws at Disney Plus at the end is kind of interesting. He's like, these kinds of IPs subsist really well on scarcity and surprise. We don't get scarcity really with Star Wars because of Disney Plus, but we can still surprise people. I think that's a really interesting comment too. Just like he's basically saying they should make less Star Wars because then it will be more successful and more exciting. Which is definitely more of the old school like movie theater mantra. And I think a lot of us have been feeling that, honestly. I would prefer it if they made a little less Star Wars just because it would be more exciting. But that's not the world we live in. So, because they're going to make a lot of Star Wars, I want all of it to be great. So, I don't know. It's an interesting quote. So, like when you hear that, when you hear Ryan Reynolds wants to write a Star Wars show and he wants to be R-rated, and now he's going public with this, trying to push it to see if maybe Disney will jump on it if fans really support it. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's not as clickbaity as, like, the headlines probably are for it, like, it is he's a good producer. He has had a lot of successes. He has been kind of also upping his producer game with how he's handled the film projects like Free Guy and stuff during COVID that did have decent returns and everything for that time period. Obviously, Deadpool and Wolverine was a massive hit, so he's got a little bit more clout. Blake Lively's not helping things with him right now with everything going on with her and Justin Baldoni and their whole court cases over the film that they were in together, and yeah, I mean, I think he's just in this position where, like, we're just waiting for the next Deadpool thing, we're not really waiting for the next Ryan Reynolds thing, right? He's had a lot of Netflix failures too, right? Like Underground 6 and or whatever it was called, and, that one film with Gal Gadot and The Rock that just looked awful,
Red
right?
Notice.
Red Notice, right? Like, um, I've heard the Trevor Project's pretty good, or not Trevor Project, sorry, the Adam Project's pretty good.
Mhm.
That kid went on to be the lead in Percy Jackson, so I think he's a good producer. But yeah, I mean, he did like the voices, which is like sort of horror, satirical, psychological, you know. So he's done something a little different than the typical Ryan Reynolds formula, but it still depends on you assuming the Ryan Reynolds character shows up, right? And, you know, he's had, like, an actors on actors where, like, he's actually really discussed in depth how and he's had other actors agree, like, it is really hard to play comedy and this type of expectation that people have for you because that's who you are, right? At some point, it does crack, it does break, but he's managed to keep it evolving or keeping it fresh enough every single time. So yeah, I mean, I get what he's saying. Maybe he is referring to the Gilroy thing that was mentioned, right? I love a Star Wars horror. I think it's more like just like a thought experiment, though. Really, that it really does kind of come off as that. And I want to see. I think we brought up like, hey, we should have like New Republic soldiers go into Exegol for cleanup, and then they face all these horrors of like the undead Sith Eternal and remnants of that. Like
Mhm.
that could be a cool video game map. It could be a cool like special presentation for like 1 hour on Disney Plus. There's so many ways to do that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's gonna be something that it's gonna be hard to sell regardless. Like, you know, it's not the same thing as like having Hulu handle Alien Earth and Disney and oh, it's Fox. You know, the way it holds all the Fox properties now and how it's been able to take the Predator franchise to new heights, to reinvigorate Alien and all that. You can't those are R-rated from the start. Star Wars isn't, and yeah, we've had stuff like Death Troopers, Red Harvest, and all that, but it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to, like, do that, especially when eventually, even if it comes out as a movie, it'll be on streaming. It won't be hidden away on Hulu, right? It'll be on Disney Plus. You'd have to be fairly protective of kids who are gonna, like, be like, "Oh, Star Wars, I'm gonna watch that," right? Like, I mean, I think you see stuff like Brain Invaders from the Clone Wars, right? Like, that's more of the horror I think Star Wars can do, and I think that's stuff that he doesn't know about, like, that they've taken a lot of 50s, 60s, 70s fears and paranoia and everything and done some great storytelling out of that, right? You don't need blood and gore, and when he says, like, emotional Trojan, I'm like, "You don't need that." We've seen Andor prove you can have some very messed up people be good guys and very seemingly sane people be bad guys, right? Like there's so much nuance you can get having to reach that level. So I'm not really seeing his point there, but if it's just, you know, food for thought, sure. I mean, why not? Like it would be something I'd like to see the franchise push and evolve into because it is an aging franchise. There is gonna be people who like us who grew up in the prequels who will outlast the people who grew up during the original trilogy. It's just a fact, right? People are living longer for the most part, and, you know, life is certainly a little different than it was in the '70s, right? So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, you know, maybe me and Liam, in like, 30 years, like, "Man, I want something very specific genre, different age." Sure, yeah, but as of now, no, I mean, we have to figure out a balance between Disney Plus, TV shows versus movies again. We have to get that sorted out. We have to get past the Skywalker saga. Throwing this out here like an R-rated horror film as we're in this really big transition phase for Star Wars, I just don't see that.
Well, a lot of people look at comedians and think of them as dumb people, right? Because they
Yeah.
play a lot of dumb people, but they're very smart, most of them,
Yeah.
and it's very difficult to deliver great comedy. And so we've already seen this. You've seen a lot of comedians, comedy actors move to drama and succeed incredibly well. I mean, most recently, somebody like Adam Sandler with Uncut Gems or Punch Drunk Love, or you saw uh, actors in the 80s a lot of times move from comedy to drama and have massive successes, but it's harder for people to move from drama to comedy in a lot of ways. Comedy is one of the most difficult genres to do. And then recently, you also had a comedian jump to horror with Jordan Peele and become a widely successful and popular horror director, making films that are nominated for Best Picture, won him an Oscar, uh, and then movies that do really well at the box office with his name alone. So it's doable, and you just don't see somebody usually with the weight and gravitas of a Ryan Reynolds in the world of Hollywood, like with the power he has at his age, just randomly be like, yeah, I'm gonna go to horror or emotional drama in Star Wars. Like usually it would be something else first. He cut his teeth in a lower to mid budget like $10 million drama
Yeah.
or $5 million horror movie, and then show that hey, I can do this, and I'm not just a comedian, and then move into Star Wars. So maybe that's why they rejected it. Who knows? But yeah, that's gonna wrap up our stream tonight. Everybody, thanks so much for joining. Oh, we did have one more question from Critical Thinker. Old Republic book recs besides Bane trilogy. Well, there's only five more, six more. The four Old Republic books, Knight Errant and Red Harvest, are the only other Old Republic books. So you don't have much to choose from. I would say out of those, Knight Errant is the closest to the Bane in trilogy in terms of timeline. So you could check that out if you're interested in that, like right before Bane trilogy time of the Jedi. But the ones that are consensus most critically acclaimed are probably the Drew Karpyshyn books, the Revan and Annihilation. Revan, I thought was excellent for 75, really 90% of the book. It's really just the last 10% of the book where it starts to fall apart a little bit. But if you're interested in Revan at all, I think it's worth checking out. Annihilation is a good, fast, easy read. Deceived, I like Deceived. I didn't love Deceived, but that is one of the most. Like, a lot of people say that's one of the best ones. So, and then that's about Malgus, who a lot of people really love. Fatal Alliance is the weakest of the four. Still worth checking out. I don't know. Out of those, I guess I'd say check out Deceived. I think that's probably the safest option. Revan. No, Revan book. All the Old Republic books are prequels to the game, which is kind of a weird thing because and some like Deceived takes place after the trailer but before the game. So if you've seen that like trailer where Malgus storms in and takes the Jedi Temple, it takes place literally right after that. And so it's kind of interesting if you're interested in like the non-game side of the Old Republic, you don't need to play the game for any of those books. And they actually all serve to set up the game, but they also don't really connect with the games that much. So it's kind of a weird, like, I don't know. It's a weird initiative for sure. But Revan is paid off in the game, which is why the ending feels so weird and abrupt because it doesn't feel like the story Karpyshyn wants to tell at all. Um, but it's really well written and exciting before that. So I recommend Revan or Deceived as the best place to start if you want to get into more Old Republic. We read Red Harvest for the channel, and it's not very good unless you like really cheesy, mediocre, bad horror. But it's pretty goofy.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo the same thoughts. I mean, Revan also just makes this huge mistake of like how they handle the Jedi exile. Like her
Yeah.
story and everything is just it's so weird. I mean, it's weird in the game too. I just don't really like how Revan was handled in the Old Republic and like how he gets kind of split up into two sides, which is just like there's a possibility of something like that happening in canon with, the Vader transitioning between the mask and, his face that we saw from the Force Awakens concept art. It's kind of already been built out in Ahsoka season 1, but not exactly, right? So, yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's fun to catch up with Revan, but then you realize how inconsequential the second game is to the story, and it should be I mean, it's not really, like, anything that implies anything happened after 1 and 2. It's trying to almost be KOTOR 3 without any of the length, without any of the progression, with all these assumptions, and then the downplaying of the second game, which has always felt very disconnected from the first one too, so yeah, I mean, it was made for the Old Republic, I get it, but it was almost, like, such a great opportunity to, like, really flesh out everything as much as possible, right, between 1, 2 of KOTOR into the gap between the Old Republic, and it doesn't. happen, right? There's some interesting writing, don't get me wrong, I think there are some good moments for sure, but it's that ending that really just makes me feel like, "Okay, I guess."
Yeah, and so as like you said, which are good, Critical Thinker, really the Old Republic, all of them outside of the Bane trilogy are like very mixed reviewed. Some people love something like Revan, some people really don't like it. Um, like Sonic and I feel fairly differently about it. Like I think it's a really good story until the last 3 chapters, 4 chapters. Like I think it moves, it's well paced. I do think it does the exile pretty well until the end of the book. And then it's really disappointing.
Yeah,
But yeah, so I feel like that book is one of the better written of the four, but it's also going to be the one that might frustrate you the most. Deceived, I feel like is the safest bet if you're looking for something that's like in the Old Republic era, doesn't really touch KOTOR era, focused on one specific time period, and you don't need the game at all. Like you can just watch that trailer and it kind of enhances the trailer and takes place in its own spot. I think that's probably your safest bet. But if you want to go in like release order as well, you can start with Fatal Alliance. That one's also just kind of overlong and not quite as interesting. But yeah, so they're all none of them are like must reads, I would say, really, unless you're a diehard Revan person and you want to know everything about him, or a diehard Malgus person and you want to know everything about him, you love Carpition and you're reading Bane right now. You want to read Revan and Annihilation, you can go for that, and you'll have read all of Carpission's Star Wars books. So those are the avenues you can go in. But that's going to wrap up our stream tonight, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you join us next week. We'll be back on the Tuesday time slot, so keep an eye out on Tuesday. We're aiming for 7 o'clock Pacific time. So join us for the latest and greatest in Star Wars news, all the stories we didn't get to over the last month that we're still running down, and for all of your questions, your comments, your theories, anything you'd like to discuss. Tonight was a good representation for a lot of you who maybe have never joined us before on one of these on what it is. A lot of questions about Star Wars, questions about superheroes, whatever you'd like to discuss, bring it, and we will discuss next week along with whatever is new in Star Wars news. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and we will see you all next week for the continuation of our live stream and Q&As.